All right, hey everyone. Thank you so much for being here. And I know how much courage it takes for you to show up to something like this, to admit that something happened, to admit that it changed you, and to maybe just maybe, that you don't have to carry this alone anymore. My name is Miles, and I'm the founder of Narcovery. And I want to start by telling you something that you probably haven't heard enough, and that's that you're not broken and that you're not crazy. And no, this isn't just anxiety or overreacting, or just being too sensitive. What you've been through is real and it deserves to be taken seriously. And our recovery isn't about sitting around and analyzing our narcissists or venting or asking, why they did what they did. Because here's the truth: understanding the narcissist doesn't heal you. What heals you is healing you. And what we do here is different. This isn't a quick fix. This isn't a surface level checklist or a 12-step program. And it definitely isn't about staying stuck in the victim story, because this is about transformation. So we go deep. We walk you through the fog together, and we go through it step by step until you're not just surviving anymore, you're reclaiming, you're rebuilding. And remember who the hell you were in the beginning. And I started this journey back in 2016, and I've been there. I know exactly what it feels like to be erased, to lose your voice, to doubt your own thoughts even. And that's why I built Narcovery in 2019, to make sure that no one else had to navigate this alone. And since then, I've helped over 1,000 people walk through this recovery path, clients from all over the world with all kinds of stories, all kinds of pain. And what we share is this. The desire to come back to yourself. And if you're here tonight, I want you to know that you're not just welcome, that you're seen. And this space is here to support you wherever you are in the process. And you can write your questions in the comments, or if you're watching the replay, you can just click on the link below to connect to somebody to get even more information. And I'll answer your questions at the end and hear your story and give everyone here a chance to talk and get the support that they need. Now, let's talk about what recovery actually looks like, right? It's not a simple process, and it's not quick. If you look at the different programs I have, like the immersion program is a 3 hour a week commitment. It's a 6 month to a 1 year journey, and it's not light work that we're doing, because it requires a commitment to yourself, right? And plus, there's one-on-one support as you need it, and we'll guide you through every step of the process, even through the relapses, the doubts, those moments in time where you actually need support. There's going to be someone there for you. And the emotional flashbacks, yeah, even the breakthroughs that feel just too good to trust at first, right? And what you're going to get is you're going to have the tools, you're going to have the structure, you'll have the support. But more importantly, you're going to have yourself again. And I'm trained in trauma recovery and narcissistic abuse, IFS training, DBT, hypnotherapy, somatic training, breath work, and group facilitation. I've studied under some of the best, like Dr. Romani, Janina Fisher, Richard Schwartz, Paul McKenna, Lane Pedersen, and even more. But what qualifies me the most is that I've actually lived it, and I've done the work, and I've watched, people rise. So tonight, I'm going to break down, how narcissists manipulate and condition us, and what that actually does to our nervous system, our self-worth, and even our own reality. And I'm also going to share how we can begin to reverse the damage with real grounded recovery. And there's no pressure here. It's just information. It's just support. And remember, healing is possible, even if you've tried everything else. So let's take a deep breath and let's begin. What I have behind me is just something that many people have already kind of seen or experienced before, because this isn't new. This is called the toxic abuse cycle, and the reason I kind of bring all of this up is because we didn't start this way, right? We kind of got sucked into these voids. We got sucked into these things, and it didn't happen right away. If you look at probably the worst thing that they've ever said or ever done, and if they had done that in the first couple weeks of the relationship, would there ever even be a relationship? The only reason I kind of point that out is because I want you to realize that there is a grooming process. Like, you didn't start here. You were groomed to be here. And the way that the grooming works is like we need to understand it. And then I'm going to talk you through how to reverse it. But the four steps of the toxic abuse cycle is like the love bombing or the honeymoon phase. There's a calm phase, there's a attention phase, and there's an incident, right? And the love bombing phase is just like, it feels so amazing. It just feels like you're just like loved, and it's just like you met your soulmate, and everything's just really amazing. And they mirror you. They see what you need. If you need somebody who's strong and confident, they're going to be strong and confident. If you need someone that's outgoing, they're going to be outgoing. But it ends up being a mask. It's something that they pretend. And they do it by just reading our own signals, by reading our own body language, by anticipating, right? A lot of people say that narcissists have no empathy, and that's not true. They have something that's called dark empathy. And that's the ability to kind of sense what other people's emotions are. And then just, play up what it is that we think that we need. And they're really good at that. So that's the kind of love bombing phase, and after that, because this takes a lot of work, right? The whole love bombing and sweeping somebody off their feet and making them feel like you've waited your entire life to meet someone like this takes a lot of work. So eventually they let down their guard, and we have something that's called the calm phase, right? And after the calm phase is kind of where we let down our guard. It's like, oh my God, I met the person of my dreams. And then the calm phase, and this is kind of where we let down our guard. And what we can do in this kind of phase of the relationship is we can share more, and we can talk about things that happened to us in the past, our exes, other traumas that we may have had, and what they're doing is they're mining for vulnerabilities in this phase of the relationship. They're taking all those little cues. They're looking at things that words. They're testing us for words that kind of trigger us. They're looking for abandonment wounds or any of those kind of things in order to use later. And then after that, what we're going to do is we shift into a phase called the tension phase. And this is kind of where it feels like you're walking on eggshells. It's like you feel like this is who they are. And there's like this calm comfort that kind of comes in. And all of a sudden, there's something that shifts. You just kind of walk into the room. And there's something that's off. And your intuition kind of says it. And your feelings just kind of say it. And then that's going to build into something, right? And this is where we can start to second guess ourselves. Is it me? Right? How can this perfect person just suddenly be upset for whatever reason? And then there's going to be an incident. And the incidents at the early beginning of the relationship are actually quite small. And part of them is testing you just to see what it is that you're going to react to. But the whole thing is with the incident and then we go back to the love bombing phase. So as we kind of go through these cycles, what you're going to realize is, especially at the beginning, the incidents are very calculated, right? Because they're going to test what it is that we need. But they're going to do an incident that's big enough that it'll disrupt our nervous system, but not big enough that the relationship's going to end. Something that they can fix in the love bombing phase. And this is where they can fake empathy. This is where they can pretend that, they're sorry or any of those things. Or make excuses or whatever it is. But then we go through another cycle. And these cycles just kind of keep repeating and repeating and repeating and repeating. What you're going to realize is, like, if you started these relationships, what's the point of the cycle? Well, I'll tell you the point of this cycle. The point of this cycle is to reduce your self-esteem, right? You may have started the relationship with a normal level of self-esteem. And a lot of people kind of get targeted when they're just emotionally vulnerable, right? I can't tell you how many clients I've had that, they meet a narcissist right after a divorce, or they meet a narcissist after a death in the family, or a job loss, or some kind of crisis, because our guard is down and we don't kind of see things as much as we'd like to. But if we started the relationship with a normal self-esteem, then we start going through these abuse cycles, right? And they keep attacking our self-esteem, attacking our self-esteem, attacking our self-esteem. And what we're going to realize is towards the end, it's like, remember earlier I asked that question, what's the worst thing they ever said or did, and we didn't end the relationship? If that had happened earlier, then there wouldn't be a relationship. But the reason they get away with it is because of the grooming process, what happened over time, again and again and again and again. And each time we go through the cycle, we give up a little bit of ourselves, right? And then at some point, the relationship would end. And it doesn't have to end. But it is kind of like one of those things where our self-esteem hits rock bottom, and when it hits rock bottom, that's where everything changes, right? And they want to push us even further and even further and even further. And so, it's just like I've split this down the middle, and what I have over here is fiction, right? This is the fantasy, this is the fairy tale. They watched all the Disney movies growing up, and they know exactly what, warms our heart and gets us going. But the reality is they're on this side, right? They have all this worry, they have all this anxiety, they have anger and rage, and they have all of these emotions that they have no ability to process. Because quite often it just kind of feels like you're dealing with an 8-year-old child sometimes, because they have the emotional processing of a child. So they don't know what to do with their emotions, so they give them to us. But in order for us to accept it, we have to go through these cycles again and again and again and again. And then there's also something that kind of happens in the background, right? Because it's just like your brain is going from this is who they are, or this is who they are, this is who they are, this is who they are. So we end up getting this something called cognitive dissonance. And cognitive dissonance is a splitting. How can both of these realities be true, right? One is real and one isn't. And that is real and this isn't. But because we've been through that process so many times, that we start to wish or want the fictional reality to be real. But that completely disrupts what the actual reality is. If you look, forget about their words. Their words are irrelevant. If you look at their actions, judge people by their actions. If you look at the way that people act, forget about what they say. But if you look at just the way that they act, well, that kind of speaks who they actually are, right? And what happens in our brain is we go from these dopamine highs, because when we feel loved and connected, then all of a sudden our brain shoots out all of this dopamine, and we feel really good. And then what happens is when we switch over to the other side, the tension phase, it's just then our minds get just hit with cortisol, right? And it's a lot of cortisol. And the whole thing is both of them, they kind of feel good, right? When you're feeling loved, it feels really good. And even when you're triggered and you're angry or you're provoked or any of those other things, it's like your brain still shoots out the adrenaline and the cortisol, and that forces us to be alert, forces us to be on guard, forces us to be all of those things. And that in itself becomes very addictive. So we end up going on to these cycles again and again and again. And even when the relationship ends, we can go through these cycles without them, right? We've given them no contact. What you're going to find is, you'll love bomb yourself, you'll find calm, and then all of a sudden it's just like the tension inside your mind will just kind of go, and then you'll get triggered, and you'll have a panic attack or anxiety attack or trouble sleeping or any of those things, and then you'll work on yourself, and you'll just kind of keep going through this cycle even after they're gone, even if you're in no contact with them. And part of it is your brain is just so used to the dopamine and the cortisol, and eventually what we got to do is we just got to slow that cycle down. Eventually we stop it, and then I'll talk you through later what it means to actually reverse it. How do we start undoing some of this damage? But if you look at the timeline of what these relationships are like, right? And this is kind of the toxic timeline. When you first meet them, what you're going to realize is it's just like the love bombing. It's mostly love bombing. Like they're the person of your dreams. They just kind of swept you off your feet, right? And then there's calm, and then the tension, the incidents, especially in the first, couple weeks or couple months of the relationship, the incidents are really small. And what you'll probably realize is that, they start testing you, right? They talk about an ex or their parent or a coworker or a friend or something. They'll just start trash talking other people just to see what kind of reaction that you get. But it won't be directed at you. And then in time, what happens is the love bombing is still a great relationship. If you look at how much love there is still, and there's still a lot of calm, the tension starts to be more directed towards you. So where they used to complain about what someone else is wearing, now they're complaining about you, or there's someone else's attitude. Now it's about you, and they can put it under the guise of trying to be helpful or because they care about you or all of those other things. But you'll notice that some of those passive aggressive things, it's just what they're designed to do is kind of really attack your self-esteem, right? Really attack your psyche. But there isn't enough here to just say it's a horrible relationship, right? But as time goes on, as the cycles just kind of continue to repeat, We get it. We love this. We want this back. We think this is who they are. And because a couple things have happened, that's the cause of it. Then eventually it kind of goes through here, and that's where it's like the love bombing and the calm become a very small part of the relationship. And what you're realizing is the tension starts to grow, and then the incidences are much longer, right? And this is where the yelling matches can happen, the screaming can happen. You can see violent outbursts. It is just like a dysregulated child, the way that they can act sometimes. And we make excuses for it because our minds are still here. This is who they are. We'll get through this, or whatever that is. Most relationships with narcissists end between here and here. Some stay to this point. And this is where you lose all sense of self-esteem, all sense of self. You just completely erase yourself from your own existence. And what you're doing now is you're anticipating their needs. You're looking at micro facial expressions. You're trying to anticipate, when do they want their coffee? How do they want their coffee? Where did this happen? How does this go? Every single need we need to do. And then the incidences will be once in a while, as long as they see that we're living in fear, because that's what this is. This is living in pure fear. Those incidences can be once in a while. And then the love bombing and the calm. At this point, we're kind of at the breadcrumbing stage. This is where it's just we're surviving on very little, right? But it is meant to be fear. And if you're going to look at the dimensions of this, it's kind of like master and servant, boss and slave, like whatever the thing is. But they want to see themselves as a up high on a pedestal, and you are just one of their lackeys. And that's kind of what happens. But then it's just like, all right, well, how do we reverse all of this? Like, because if we're here, what we want to do is just from our self-esteem point of view, kind of go to here and then go to here and then go. Eventually, it's just like make all our way through this whole process backwards. And there's tools that we can use to do that. And one of the things that I use, and this is I got training from Veterans Affairs, which does a lot of work with just complex trauma. But I call it the 8 Fs, the 4 phases of Narcovery, and just call it like a roadmap, right? And the way that we kind of work our way through, how we kind of reverse some of this damage, is the number one thing we need to do is face our fears. In order to face our fears, we need to establish safety, security, and stability, in whatever form that takes, whether it's in the relationship or outside of the relationship. We need to establish safety, security, and stability. Once we establish that, then we have to, number 2, which is feel our feelings. Because what happens is we have to survive those environments. It's just like our emotions are either we're dysregulated and they're too intense, or we've suppressed them. Either way, they're kind of stuck in our nervous system. They're stuck in our limbic brain. And in order to heal, in order to process, we have to feel the feelings we weren't allowed to feel. So there's going to be sorrow, there's going to be sadness, there's going to be anger, there's going to be rage, there's even going to be withdrawal. Like we're going to go through withdrawal because we get addicted to these highs and lows and the adrenaline and the cortisol and the dopamine, all of those other things. And as the feelings come up, and they'll leak out of your eyeballs. Right? There's like a remembrance and mourning phase. And part of it is you're mourning the old version of yourself that allowed this to happen. Partly you're mourning the person who never was, the person that they pretended to be, who wasn't, that we wanted them to be so real and they weren't. And then the next phase of it is, finding freedom. And this is reconnection and integration. After we've released some of those emotions, after all of those other things, we start to create meaning. We start to understand those old patterns and how they kind of repeated again and again in our systems. And we learn, and this is where we integrate. And then the last phase is future fusion. And I also call this post-traumatic growth, right? Because here's the whole thing. It's just like, yeah, we experience these traumas, and it is a complex trauma. And as we kind of go through the healing process, it's just like all of a sudden, we eventually get to the post-traumatic growth phase where we're actually stronger and more resilient than we were before we even met them. Why? Because we were tested. Right? We were tested. We were pushed to our limits. We found our limits, and they pointed out all the weak spots, right? You could spend, 2, 3 years with a therapist, if they're a cognitive behavioral therapist, just sitting on the couch talking about stuff, right? Or you can spend 3 hours with a narcissist, and they'll find your weaknesses. They'll find all of your flaws. So if they've pointed out all our flaws, cool. Then all we got to do is face our fears, feel our feelings, and then eventually, once we process those feelings, we're going to feel reconnected and integrated, and eventually it's just like that wound is no longer our weakness. And the whole thing with this chart is not linear. I'd love to say it's, week 1 is this, week 2, week 3, week 4, and then you're done. It doesn't work that way. It is, emotions are going to come and emotions are going to go, but this is the process to work through those emotions. And so you're going to be facing your fears, and then it's going to be intense. It's going to take a long time to go from number 1 to number 2. A lot of us dissociate. It's like our emotions all shut off. It's like you don't even know what we're feeling sometimes, because it's either too intense and our mind shuts it off, or we can't even label it. Like, we haven't felt this way in a little while, and that becomes difficult. So there are tools to help face fears of create stability, and it's like somatic practices, breathing practices. There's a whole whack of things. Feeling our feelings. IFS is really good for that. Group therapy is really good for that. There's a lot of different techniques and tools just to help, label the feelings, allow them to allow ourselves to be angry, because we can't store anger. Allow ourselves to feel sad, because it's going to affect our day-to-day life. Once we feel our feelings, once we release them, then we get that feeling of freedom again, and then we can have a positive outlook, because we got tested, and life tried to take us out, and it failed, right? So, and then we go through it again and again. And at first, as you start kind of the recovery process, you're going to spend a lot of time at 1 and number 2, right? But eventually we'll get to number 3 and number 4, and a trigger will happen. But then you have the tools to process it. It's just like, what is the fear that I need to face? How do I create stability and safety in whatever that system is? What are my emotions? How can I feel them? How can I express them? Journal them. Talk to somebody. Find freedom, and then reconnect. After the emotions are released, you just kind of reconnect to yourself. You go through the abuse cycle, and you do it backwards, right? Because there's the abuse cycle right there, right? We got the love bombing, calm, tension, and incident. This is basically taking the abuse cycle that has lowered your self-esteem, but going through it backwards. You start with the trigger. We start with the incident. What is that memory that we weren't able to process? Create stability in a place where we can actually witness it without reliving it again. Because flashbacks can be really difficult. And there's a whole whack of different tools that we can use to create enough safety and stability to reduce the flashbacks. And then create a safe place where we can witness our feelings. Right? And sometimes they're going to flow through us. Sometimes we just need to witness them and hold them and understand them and just say, I love you and I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. And then, we reconnect to ourselves. And that's where we go through the calm phase. So we got the incident. You got the tension of those feelings. You have to sit in very intense feelings for a little while. And once they pass, we get calm. And once the calm comes, we just realize that I faced a fear. If I can face one fear, I can face the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And eventually, you're going to be like in the post-traumatic growth phase. And you're going to be taking on challenges you never really thought you could before. Because this, for some of us, is the hardest thing that we ever have to do. And if we go through it, and if we do the work, if we do the healing work, then all of a sudden it's just like, if the narcissist can't take us out, well, who can, right? And now that we have the radar, we know the names, we know the terms, we know the way that they talk and the way that they manipulate. No one's going to do that again. So that becomes a superpower. And if that becomes a superpower, then you can become unstoppable, which is really powerful. So it is taking that abuse cycle and just kind of going through it backwards. And that takes training, that takes support, that takes all sorts of things. The next thing I'm going to take you through is the drama triangle, and this is really important, especially if we got to deal with court cases, if we have to deal with lawyers, if we have to deal with, and this could even be a work environment or even family, because family can be a very very toxic environment for a lot of us. And a lot of us have actually been groomed in our own childhood. So I'm going to take you through this, and if you can, I would say write this down. And it's called the trauma triangle. It's also called the conflict triangle. It's got a couple different names. Lynn Forrest is the one that kind of pioneered the upper triangle. I can't remember the name of the doctor that did the bottom triangle, but that was like back in the late 60s. And this was kind of like in the late 80s, early 90s when Lynn Forrest kind of developed it. But what you're going to see is that if you're going to write this down, draw a line in the center of the piece of paper. Draw a triangle pointing up on the top, a triangle pointing down on the bottom. On the bottom triangle, I want you to write drama. This is intense emotions. And on the top, I want you to write no drama. Right? When they first realized this lower triangle, what they realized was, and this was a psychotherapist, I think, that was dealing with high conflict family dynamics, and that's what his role was. And over all the years of his study, what he realized is just whenever there's drama or whenever there's conflict, that the people within the conflict play one of three roles. And the roles that they play is you got victim on the bottom, you got persecutor on the top left, and you got savior on the top right. Right? So we have to play, if there's drama, then these three roles are being played out. And what's interesting about this is that the roles switch, and they switch like on a dime, right? Somebody can be calling you all sorts of names, and then you call them names back, and then they play the victim. How dare you say all of those things? The savior role has a way of this is kind of like the people pleaser, the placater, anyone if just like apologizing for something we didn't do just in order just to keep the peace. Those are things. It can also be an avoider role, just keeping quiet. The victim role is kind of like the freeze response. The persecutor is like the fight response. Because we've got those four responses. Whenever we're triggered, we're going to have fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. Right? So you got fight, and the savior is going to be flight and runs away. The victim is going to be freeze, and the savior will also be a fawner. Try to anticipate the needs of these abusive people. But those four roles, they don't help. Right? As long as we're playing one of those four roles, like we're going to be stuck in drama, and this drama goes on forever. And there's three other roles that we can play. And you can see the victim's on the bottom, so the observer's on the top. It's the exact opposite, right? And part of the observer is this is a place of no drama. It's just like, if you're in a dramatic situation, everyone always falls to the victim, right? Even a persecutor feels like a victim, so they feel justified in persecuting. The savior feels like a victim, so they have to placate and they have to people please or anticipate or say sorry for things that they're not sorry for. But we can just kind of observe. There's drama here. How am I the victim? What is my role over here? And who's playing what role? And then the second part is the top left, which is right above the persecutor, and that's the asserter. And the asserter is boundaries, right? And boundaries are without drama. Boundaries with drama is the persecutor role. Boundaries without drama is that. And the big difference that you can see is like an angry no. It's like, no! That's a persecutor role, right? But if it's a calm no, it's just like, no, that doesn't fly with me. That's more of what the asserter is. And the asserter can be very assertive. Don't think that the asserter can't, set strong boundaries or hard boundaries or fight back or defend themselves if they're actually in danger. The asserter will do that. But it's done from a place of self-protection. It's done from a place of no drama. And then we have the healer. Right? And the healer is pretty much what I talked about, is the process of facing your fears and feeling your feelings and finding your freedom and then become future facing. Right? It's to go through the abuse cycle backwards. And that requires emotional awareness. That requires emotions to flow. And it's not pretty. It's not an easy process. But in order for that to go through, it's just like we know that there's going to be a certain amount of suffering. Now I'll take you through a couple stories just so you can see how the drama triangle plays out, and how we can kind of change our roles through it, right? Like if we look at the story of the fisherman, um, and the beggar, right? So the beggar is like hungry and wants a fish. So feels like he's a victim. And what is he asking? He invites. Everyone gets invited onto the drama triangle. When we in the drama triangle, we realize there was an invitation that we missed. If we're observant enough, then we can not fall on it. But so he's hungry, and he sees that a fisherman's got a good catch from the day, and he's asking the fisherman to play the savior. Just give me a fish because I'm hungry, right? And the fisherman, if they're on the top triangle, play the observer, set a boundary, and can say, no, I'll teach you how to fish, but I'm not going to give you a fish. It's not going to be in your best interest, right? And then we can look at what's the reaction of the beggar. He's going to go back to the victim. I asked you to play the savior, and you didn't, right? If he did. Well, if he gave him the fish, then the drama triangle keeps going on forever. And that's the whole thing with drama. It will circulate forever and ever and ever. It doesn't actually stop until somebody, sets a boundary, sets the observer role, does the healing, so they're not triggered as easily. So even if the beggar who doesn't get that fish, what can he do? He can play the victim, or he can persecute, say, screw you, or he can beg even more. Please give me that. Please give me that. And if the fisherman gives in, then they perpetuate the abuse. Anytime that we've made the persecutor okay, or the savior okay, or the victim okay, then we enabled whatever that behavior actually is. So in order to break the behavior, we have to actually say no. And what does that mean for the healer role? It's just like, all right, so now that beggar is now going to go hungry. And maybe the beggar dies. Like maybe he starves to death. It's not the fisherman's responsibility to do that. It's just he understands that healing requires a certain amount of suffering. And then, maybe in a day or two, if the beggar still hasn't eaten, he'll come back, right? And then the fisherman will say the same thing. I'm not going to give you a fish, but I'll teach you how to fish, right? And then the beggar, if he takes the guy's advice, eventually moves from the bottom triangle to the top triangle. And what we want to do in the healing process is live on the top triangle for as much as we can. And you're also going to see how the roles switch really, really quickly. So the next story I can kind of take you through is like from the Bible. It's just like the story of Good Friday, right? So on Good Friday, it's just like Jesus was carrying the cross. He had the crown of thorns. He was like stabbed in the ribs. And he's carrying his whole thing to his own death, right? But the whole thing with Jesus is just like, he's never played the persecutor. Like, talk about a great role model. Never played the persecutor. He's never actually saved somebody. I know we like to call him the savior, but I would say he's more of a healer, helps blind see, and all of those other things. And never been a victim. He's never been a victim. And even walking to his own death, he refuses to accept the drama. And if you remember the story, it's just like, all right. So then one of the apostles comes down from the hills and goes to Jesus, and he's like a victim now. Because the apostles, like, I've been following you, Jesus. You've been this role model for me. You've taught me so many things, and now all of a sudden it's just like they're going to put you to your death, and I don't want to suffer. So what am I going to do? I'm going to go up into the hills. We're going to have a posse, and we'll grab our pitchforks and rocks and bows and arrows. And we're going to come back and we're going to attack the Romans, and we're going to save you, right? But, even in that, like, so there's this apostle that's been following Jesus. Like, if it was me, I'd be like, dude, have you not listened to anything that I've been saying this entire time? Like, anything, because this is not who I am, right? But that's me. But Jesus is far more articulate than that. And he just says, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Even in his own death, he refuses to play the victim. And if he wants to heal the world, he has to rise up above the top triangle, And even if you look at, the Bible, like why did God send Jesus down to Earth? It's like, because they're here on Earth, it's just like everyone's fighting, everyone's playing a victim and persecuting each other and enabling each other, and just chaos and war and famine and all sorts of crimes that are being committed. And he's like, man, you guys need a role model, so I'm going to give you a role model. And sends Jesus down. And Jesus goes through an entire life and changes, millions of lives over his lifetime, without ever being the persecutor, without enabling bad behavior from others. Doesn't negotiate with terrorists, right? And has never been the victim. So you can see how the drama triangle rises up. You can also look at it through, like, I don't know if you guys watch Star Wars, but Star Wars is a really cool thing, because it's just like there's a lot of religious kind of stuff kind of going on in the background. And but what you're going to look at is like Luke Skywalker's character, and what you're going to find with most stories, with most hero journey, when you're looking at the hero's journey, it's just living a regular life, doing regular things, and eventually you get hit by a challenge, and when you hit that challenge, you have to rise up to your full potential, and that's kind of where we all are. It's like in space where it's just like it's time for us to rise up to meet our whole potential. But if you look at, he's there's Luke Skywalker, and he's a sand farmer, and comes back, and his aunt and his uncle are dead, and all of a sudden, he's a victim, and then he's like, well, who did this? Oh, the emperor did this, right? So he's like, all right, well, I'm gonna persecute them, and I'm gonna save the world, right? So he's sucked into the drama. This changes, though, when he meets Yoda, because all hero's journey people, it's just like you always need that guide to guide you out. And Yoda, there's no drama in Yoda, right? He plays the observer, he sets boundaries, he heals. And even Luke, it's like Luke's got all of this trauma that he's got, because he has his only family that he's ever known is now dead. So he's got to go through the recovery process, and a lot of it was like what Yoda was doing with him was somatic work, right? It was getting him to breathe and getting him to focus his energy, and carrying him in the backpack through the woods, making him, work through the trauma work. And then Luke Skywalker's character, his ascension into the upper triangle, happens in that one scene. And the scene in Empire Strikes Back is when they're standing in front of a cave, and inside the cave they hear a noise, and that noise is Luke asks, Yoda, like, what's that? And Yoda says, that's your greatest fear, right? Your biggest enemy, right? And then Luke Skywalker, what does he do? He turns on his lightsaber. And Yoda says, you're not going to need that where you're going, right? He doesn't play the victim, he doesn't play the persecutor. He knows that Luke is going to make a mistake, but he has to learn from his mistake. So Yoda lets him go into that cave. Right? It'd be cool if he just kind of grabbed the lightsaber off of him, slapped him in the back of the hand, and says, dude, I'm 400 years old. You know how many Jedis I've trained? Like, you got all of those things going on, and it's like, you don't listen to me? He's just like, all right, you want to make a mistake, go make a mistake. So he goes into the cave, and who's there? It's Darth Vader, and they have a sword fight. And eventually he chops Darth Vader's head off, and it rolls over, and when the mask opens, what he sees is himself, right? And the lesson being, it's just like we are our own worst enemy. Even in this trauma recovery, it's just like we become our own worst enemy. Because even when the narcissist voice goes, it's our own voice that replaces it. And we can call that an introject. It's an introject of their voice kind of in our minds that just kind of repeats again and again and again. And we need to kind of be able to observe our own thoughts. We need to be able to set boundaries, when we are triggered. We need to allow ourselves to go through the healing process, to feel our feelings, to integrate, to find safety, to do all of those other things. So the emotions kind of flow, and then allows us to ascend up into the upper triangle. And this repeats itself in all stories. The only stories where this becomes all tragedies, there's not an ascension. There isn't an ascension from going to the top to the bottom, right? Because in like Romeo and Juliet, right? You've got Romeo and Juliet. They're star-crossed lovers, but their families are persecuting each other. So it's just like, they're both victims, and they go to the priest and their friends to create this whole secret thing, and they're gonna play a bit of a persecutor because it's just like, screw our families, I'm gonna fake my own death. And of course, Romeo doesn't get the message, and there they are on the death scene at the end of Romeo and Juliet. And he sees her dead, and he's a victim now, right? So he wants to save himself from his own suffering, so he persecutes himself, and he stabs himself in the heart. He dies. She wakes up. She does the exact same thing. So it's like tragedies always kind of end here. The thing with tragedies, though, if you put the audience in the observer role, then you can see that there's actually a higher message even from tragedies. Because this is absurd. Montagues and Capulets are always at conflict, creating drama. They don't even know what they're fighting over. And it just kind of creates all of those things. And a lot of these toxic relationships, they do end in tragedy. But what happens is when we kind of go through the healing process, when we go through the recovery process, and we can kind of rise above. And you can ask yourself, what would Jesus do, right? What would Yoda do? What would Gandhi do? There's Gandhi's story, right? It's like he's a guy who doesn't even have closed-toe shoes. Like he wears sandals. And doesn't even have good eyesight, but he takes on the British Army, right? The most powerful army at the time, takes them on. Without ever playing the victim, without playing the persecutor, without even trying to save it. It was just like, I observe that you're here, you do not belong, and I'm going to quietly say that you need to get out. And of course, the British were brilliant at propaganda and baiting and all of those other things. He never took the bait. Right? Never took the bait, never played the victim, never did any of those other things. He stayed calm in a place of no drama. And how one man can take out the most powerful army in the world. It's just like that's the power that we have when it comes to dealing with narcissists. And part of it is just like a lot of you already know the gray rock technique. And for those that don't know what gray rock is, but gray rock is the way, like when it comes to conflict, is to be the most boring person in the world, like manifest the dullest, least interesting person in the world. Because what triggers a narcissist, what do they actually want? They want supply. And what's supply? Supply are these intense emotions. They would love to be loved. They prefer to be loved, actually. But they can't be loved and idolized, and they would love to be hated, as long as it's something. The opposite of love isn't hate. Right? Love and hate are actually on the same side of the coin. They're very intense emotions. Right? One's got dopamine, one's got adrenaline and cortisol. They're intense. You can love somebody and hate somebody and then love them again. Right? That's how quickly that we can go. The opposite of love and hate is indifference. And at some point, throughout the healing process, we go through indifference. And, why is Narcovery different? Because we're not looking to point fingers. We're not looking to set blame. We're looking to be indifferent. Like, these people are dysfunctional. They're not healthy people. I don't care. I've got all the research, everything there is to know about narcissism. And yet, it doesn't help you heal. Right? What helps you heal is to go inwards, is to go into yourself and heal yourself. Right? So that's so remember those roles, and if you do find yourself in a trauma, even if it's internal, even if it's yourself persecuting yourself, even if you're in a freeze response, and the savior response is like any kind of thing that avoids your feelings. You can numb out to 16 hours of Netflix. You can numb out to alcohol or drugs, or you can you can even escape to whatever it is that is your distraction. It doesn't cure the pain. It doesn't cure the suffering. The only way that we can do that is to go to the upper triangle and then play the healer role. Witness, how am I self-persecuting? What am I avoiding to feel? And then feel what I want to avoid to feel. Turn down the inner abuser that's kind of going into our own mind. And realize I'm not a victim anymore. I was once, right? We don't erase our stories. We were a victim at one point. We're not now. So that's where the asserter kind of comes in. And then through time, we learn to do this a little bit easier, a little bit quicker. But this is pretty much what we talked about, right? So you get the love bombing, the calm, the tension, and the incident. And all of these things over time, they're going to lower your self-esteem, lower your self-esteem. What we do is we end up going through that cycle backwards. We start with the trigger. We sit with the tension of it. Avoiding it isn't going to save us, right? We have to sit in the tension of it. We have to watch the lower triangle from the upper triangle. We need to have that healed part of us, and part of us is already healed. Sit in that tension until the emotions kind of process and go. Then we're going to find calm, and then we're going to find self-love. And then we're going to actually have the confidence to do that again. Because if we can face one fear, we can face the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And we go through this abuse cycle backwards enough times. And it's not linear. You're always going to be moving up and down. And eventually it's just like, some people just kind of like the internal world, this is all intention. And, there's this very little, love and calm in our lives. But as we kind of go through this abuse cycle backwards and backwards, our system starts to reset. Our nervous system starts to reset. We learn how to calm ourselves. We learn how to talk to ourselves in a more gentle voice, in a kind voice. And then, that love of ourselves starts to grow and starts to grow. And eventually it's just like it goes back to a very normal state. And one of the tools to kind of get through this is the 8 F's. Like, what am I afraid of? What am I afraid to feel? And feel what that is. And then find the freedom, and then look towards a future that you can attack, right? And whenever you're dealing with a narcissist, it's just like, if there's drama, if there's an intensity, shut it off, because they want the drama. They want you to hate them. They want you to fight back. They're going to do a smear campaign on you. They want you to do it back so they can play the victim. Why? Right? They'll just play the victim. So then they can persecute you even more, right? Revenge on a narcissist doesn't work, because they can escalate things far more than a normal, rational human being does. And if you actually want revenge on a narcissist, remember that they're completely, the opposite of all of this drama is indifferent. Don't really care. I'm going to go out, I'm going to have a meaningful, full, rich life with meaningful, full, rich people. And I got skills now to heal my traumas and to do all of the work, right? And so the next thing I'm going to take you guys through, and this is going to be really helpful. So write this down just so you have it. But it is a roadmap, and it's not a roadmap to anything. I'm not going to call it a roadmap to recovery. It's not a roadmap. It's a roadmap to whatever it is that you want, right? But the first thing you have to do is you have to figure out what do I really want, right? And this is where we have to awaken the healed self. There's a part of us, there's a part of our mind, we kind of sit in silence and observe. It's already healed, that it knows our greater good. And we have to ask ourselves, what is it that I really want, right? And you're going to realize that you have to ask yourself that question a lot. Usually when I take on a new client, I ask that question 7 times, because generally I find it takes 7 times to find that answer, right? Somebody's like, what do I really want? It's like, I want a Porsche 911 convertible, right? And it's just like, all right, you can put that in through this thing, and you can get your Porsche 911 convertible, but that's not coming from your awakened self. What is your healed self? What does a Porsche actually represent? It represents security. It represents safety. It represents, achievement. It represents freedom. All right. So what you're looking for is freedom. So you don't actually need the Porsche. How cool is that? You don't even need the Porsche, right? And we can be triggered if we're not in our healed self. It's like, what do I really want? Oh, I want fairness. I want revenge. I want any of those other things. It's not coming from the upper triangle. It's coming from a place of lack. And even if we could just say, I want peace, like that's not coming from a higher perspective either. That's coming from, I want to dissociate. I just want to shut down. I want to live in a trailer in Colorado somewhere and not talk to anyone for the rest of my life. That's peace, but that's not actually what you want, right? What you're looking for is safety and security, and what you're looking for is, to be able to have your confidence back. You want to have any of those other things back. So figure out what it is that you want. Awaken that healed self. You can imagine yourself a year from now, and you're already healed, because the healing process takes time. But if you're already healed, what kind of life are you living? right? Are you trapped in solitude? Are you just bitter and angry at the world? Are you living a brave life? Are you living a courageous life? Are you actually following those dreams, right? How many things did we give up in order to survive that relationship? And now that we've kind of taken that away, it's just like, oh, cool. Now it can be career success. It can be, I can be a public speaker. I can be helping other people. I can, be a bigger. I can finally, finish my guitar lessons. I can write songs. I can do whatever it is. It's just like whatever your passion is. It's just like that's what you need to do. And then number two is truth. And this is where we have to be brutally honest with us. Like what's getting in the way, right? What's getting in the way? If you want, to be courageous and powerful, like what's getting in my way, right? And then, for some of us, it's trauma. For some of it's PTSD, the flashbacks, the anxiety, waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning, sudden panic attacks. Like those are all things that are getting in the way. Anxiety. And it could even be money, right? Because they do drain our bank accounts, right? But whatever that is getting in the way, now you know what's getting in the way. And quite often when I ask this question, what is it that you really want? And people will be like, well, I'll tell you what I don't want. Cool. Write down everything you don't want right there, right? Because that's what's getting in your way. And the next thing that we have to do is commit to a plan, right? Because it's just like, yeah, we can have these moments of enlightenment. We can have these moments of clarity where it's just like with the future kind of, we see it. We know exactly what we need to do. But if we don't do something right away, if we don't make that commitment to change, a week from now, our old patterns are just going to come back. And we got to go through the whole process again of figuring out what is it that I really, really want. So commit to doing something right away. And then next is number 4, which is slay all obstacles. We also call it slaying all dragons, right? This is where we have to actually commit to make changes, remove the BS, right? And that means, if it's trauma that you need to work on, these problems have already been solved. There's treatment programs for trauma recovery. There's the treatment programs for PTSD. There's medication. There's medical support. There's family. There's friends. There's community. There's connection. There's communities like Narcovery where it's just like you can just kind of go there and work through the stuff. But you have to make those changes, and you have to commit to making those changes every single day. And you remove BS, right? And BS, what I actually call BS is belief systems. And the belief systems that narcissists kind of implant in our minds is I'm not good enough, right? I don't belong. Nobody cares about me. I'm not loved. I deserve this to happen. That's a belief system. Right? And that's also what's getting in your way. Those belief systems are getting in your way. So we got to take those away, and we got to work through them. And this isn't easy because we are talking about ingrained trauma patterns that are just kind of create dark, deep roots into our subconscious mind. In order to change that, we need to go to number 5. Create a routine. Right? Create a routine. Has to be something that we commit to doing every single day. If we've been through these abuse cycles for so long and our self-esteem has gone back up, we have to do the work in order to build that back up. And there needs to be a daily self-care routine where you constantly challenge those beliefs, right? Those old beliefs are going to come back. They're going to come back tomorrow. They're going to come back next week. They're going to come back again and again and again. And they're going to get quieter as you do it. But you have the tools, right? You face your fears. You can feel your feelings. You can find freedom. And then you can start looking at the future in a different way, right? What do I need to feel safe? What do I need to feel secure? What do I need to feel that I haven't felt before? And do that on a daily basis, and then constantly challenge those beliefs, because the old thought patterns are going to come back. And when they come back, we need to hold them with love. We need to be the observer role, set boundaries with our own thoughts, beliefs, and emotions, and then actually go through the process of processing that hurt and that trauma, right? And then second is you raise your expectations. And the way that you raise your expectations is you check in with yourself and others. Right? And this could be mindfulness, this could be journaling, this could be going to church, this could be prayer, this could be all sorts of things where you just kind of check in with yourself. How am I actually feeling? Because so many of us, we shut our emotions off. We don't actually know what we're feeling. So we have to actually learn to feel again. And we need to check in with ourselves and others, which is like coming to calls like this and doing group sessions and learning all of those other things. Check in with yourself and others. Because what you're going to realize is that whatever your problems are, what's getting in your way, there's solutions for it. There's dozens of treatment modalities. IFS is great for getting rid of all of those other things or treating it. Dialectic behavioral therapy will just help regulate your nervous system. All sorts of different things that we can do, that we can try, and keep trying other things again and again and again. And the next thing we do is number 7, is celebrate all wins, right? We celebrate each stage of recovery, right? It's like, I had a good night's sleep. That is something to recover from, right? I haven't showered in 3 days and I showered today. Yes! That's a trauma response. That's something we need to celebrate. I had a panic attack, but it was only for 10 minutes versus it didn't take me out the entire day. That's something to celebrate. And you know what else we celebrate? We celebrate our setbacks. What didn't work? Why? Because this is the trick of the roadmap. It's just like, you have a setback. What do? You go back to the beginning. You go back to number 1. Check in with yourself. Is this what I really want? If you go through this thing and you didn't want that, you're going to have a setback. Check in. Is that enough? Right? Now you have new information. You got more to go on. You have something that got in your way. You have more information. Cool. Now we can put that into number 2. Right? This is my setback. Cool. Now I know what to work on. I'm going to commit to a plan to working on whatever that setback is. It's going to go right there. Then I'm going to slay those obstacles. I'm going to make changes. I'm going to commit to make changes. I'm going to remove that belief system that caused that setback, that belief that set me back. I'm going to create a new routine, right? And then, daily self-care. Challenge those beliefs, new beliefs, because we have a setback that we're working through. And then raise your expectations. Constantly check in with yourself and others, because you're going to find that we've got a lot of people on this call, but it's just like there's people everywhere that have had these setbacks that we can connect with, and then celebrate the wins. Just like, I overcame a setback, that's a win, and then I had another setback. Great, love it, because you can actually put what do I want to do. It doesn't matter how old you are. You can put that you want to go be a dancer on Broadway, right? It doesn't matter how old you are. That's what you really want to do. What's getting in your way? I don't know how to dance. I can't play music. I don't know choreography. I don't know any of those other things. Commit to a plan. What am I going to do right now? I'm going to get those skills. I'm going to learn those skills. I'm going to get those things. I'm going to remove all the obstacles. It's not my age. It's not this. It's not that. Create a routine where you just work on it again and again and again. And then check in with yourself and others. Talk to a professional. Get coaching. Get more training. Do more videos. Fail more. Dance badly. Right? And then you can learn more. Cool. Is that what I really, really want? And then just keep going through that again and again and again. And you do that, 5 million times, you're going to be dancing on Broadway. I don't care what the challenge is. And if you can do that, like, you can see people who rise up from the ashes and challenge all of their beliefs. It's just like, you go through the system again and again, and it takes support, because, it's like, I have tools to make sure that's what you actually want, right? Because if we put something wrong in this system, it doesn't work. What gets in your way? So many of us don't even know what gets in our way. But there's tools to treat trauma, to reset our nervous system, to deal with PTSD, to help with anxiety, to figure out what it is that you need, safety and stability. Commit to a plan, commit to yourself, because it is you that's going to heal. Narcissists isn't going to heal us. I wish they would. They cause the damage, but it's our problem. It's just like they backed a truckload of manure and they dumped it on your front lawn, and then they drove away, right? So you can sit there and complain about this truckload of manure, or you can actually clean it up. And in time, it's just like your lawn is going to be clean and fertilized. Because of all the BS that we have to do, we can actually turn that into fertilizer, into growth, into just kind of our wisdom. And then just keep going through that roadmap again and again and again and again. And there's tools for every single thing. There's tools for routines. There's tools for checking in with yourself and others. There's tools for, to celebrate our wins, and even celebrate our setbacks. Because if we're committed enough, those setbacks are just a setback. They're temporary, right? And then there's 3 stages before we can even do the trauma work, right? And some of us aren't ready to go into that, because it's just like, it is a big time commitment. It does take time. It does take effort, and it's not an easy process. But before we can even begin, we have to go through these phases. Hey, Keith. And, it's just like first we got to recognize that there is a problem. When we were in those relationships, many of us didn't even know what narcissism was. We didn't even realize we were being manipulated. We had no clue. So if we don't know that there's a problem, there isn't a problem. And this is happening in the background. But now we know that there is a problem. So the next question is it bad enough? Right? Is it bad enough? And if it is bad enough, you've said, I've hit my limit, this is as far as I want to go, I need to do something about this recovery process. And it's just like, you've got to make the next decision, which is make a decision to do something. Because the whole thing is, it's just like in those abuse cycles, like we kind of get used to them, right? And even when the relationship ends, we can say, oh, the relationship is over, but yet our mind is still abusing itself. And that's where we have to say, I want to do something, but have I hit my limit, right? I'm coping with alcohol, or I'm coping with avoiding these things. I'm just going to live in a trailer in Colorado and not talk to anyone, right? That is, you haven't hit your limit, right? Because you can't escape your own mind. We do have to go and do the work. Right? And then the last phase is take action. It's like, what can I do right now? Because it's just like, one of the things we're going to find is we'll go through the abuse cycle ourselves. We'll be abusing ourselves just by, obsessing over narcissists and obsessing over narcissism videos. Like, why the feed is different? Because I actually talk about, feelings and emotions and processing feelings and processing emotions. Because that is the hard part. Right? It is the harder part of the recovery process, but it is just like it is so important to do. So if you recognize the problem and you realize that it's bad enough, if you've made a decision to do something about it. If you're treading water and you think you can tread water for a bit longer, then keep doing that. The problems aren't going to go away, right? If you're stuck in the loop of just thinking that if I understand narcissism, I'll be able to fix them. Nobody's ever been able to fix them. I got my training from Dr. Ramani, and even her herself knows way more about narcissism than any doctorate. Got papers about everything. Right? Can't be fixed. Can't be fixed. And there are ways and tools that you can negotiate, and there are ways that you can protect yourself, even if you're in the relationship, because she has a lot of training on how to survive within those toxic dynamics. Because the South Asian markets, they don't have the option of divorce like many of us do in North America and Europe. Wherever everyone is from. But then we have to say enough is enough. We're going to take action right now. And that's where it's just like, all right, I started this whole talk by saying it's not an easy process. It's a hard process. It can be painful at times. But if we don't do it, then if nothing changes, nothing changes. All right. Well, before we go into the open discussion, so make sure you stay for that, I'm going to be taking your questions, and we're going to do a deep dive into some powerful conversations together. And I want to share something important with you. This information I'm giving you tonight, it's valuable, and it's a good starting point, but it on its own, it's just a Band-Aid. And yeah, you might feel a little bit lighter. You might even feel, seen, and I'm glad for that. But healing from narcissistic abuse isn't just about understanding what happened. It's about what you do next, because insight alone doesn't change your life. Action does. And if you're ready to take the next step, then should be a link in the descriptions, or there might be a button below. Click it now, book a free consultation. Someone from my team will connect with you to learn about what you're going through and walk you through the options. And if it's a good fit, we'll get you enrolled and started right away, because we want to help. I want to be there to help you, walk you through this journey together. And I've helped 1,000 people reclaim their voice, their boundaries, and their peace. And I can help you too. So if this has stirred something into you tonight, and if you felt like, this is what I need, then trust that. Take action now, because you're worth taking the next step. And now let's open things up, because I'd like to actually hear from you. I want to see what your questions are. Let's see, John Walsh, the only ones that can change ourselves, and yeah, we can't wait for anyone. Absolutely not. We're the ones that need to do the work, and getting support, getting help, and coming to these things, learning about healing and recovery. Learning about things like IFS, learning about breath work, learning about all these trauma recovery strategies, resetting your nervous system again and again and again and again, just makes it a little bit easier. But yeah, does anyone have any questions? You can kind of unmute yourself, and everyone's going to get a chance to talk or share or anything. How you doing, Keith?
I'm hanging in there.
Good, good. Yeah, I've been working with Keith for some time. How do you find this process? Because you know that we do all of these things, but every session it doesn't feel like we're doing them. But when I go through it, I'm just like, you realize we went through the abuse cycle backwards 3 times, right?
Yeah,
And it's just because of all the tools, all the different techniques. But yeah, you can remember when we first met and where you are now. Just like all the successes that you
yeah.
had, all the things that you've
Oh, yeah.
overcome. Like
A
you're
lot
not.
of success. You know, backtrack as well, but push
Yeah,
forward,
yeah, yeah.
accept it, and keep moving forward.
Yeah. That's where we celebrate our setbacks, right? Cool. I found a
Yeah,
new weak spot. I found something else I need to work on, and then commit to changing that.
absolutely.
Hey,
Any hints on how to deal with getting to sleep at night? Usually it takes me quite some time to get to sleep. I lose a lot of sleep thinking about
yeah.
what has happened.
Well, part of it is trying to slow down. Like the limbic system just kind of takes a hit, right? Whenever we're living in a fight, flight, freeze, and fawn response, like it's survival mode, right? And no wonder you can't sleep, because that actually makes sense. You can't sleep because your subconscious says, "I'm in danger, I'm in danger, I'm in danger." So then it just becomes like you got to process some of those traumas. What you're going to find is the thoughts that you have before you go to sleep. Those are the ones that you need to work through, right? Because as soon as our mind gets calm, our traumas are going to find a space to come out, right? And we can try to push them down. We can try to ignore them. We can drink ourselves to sleep, or take sleeping pills and all those other things. And they're temporary fixes. It doesn't solve the whole thing. But it is dealing with the core trauma. And sleep is a symptom, right? It's a symptom of those things. Do you have any other symptoms? Do you have a lot of flashbacks? Do you have like ruminating thoughts? Do you think about old conversations a lot? When you do fall asleep, do you find yourself waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning? What are other symptoms that you're experiencing? All of them?
Race, Racing thoughts.
Yeah,
At night I'm going 100 miles an hour.
yeah. Yeah. So yeah, with my clients, I have different kind of sleep strategies and things that you need to do. First thing that I would recommend is just kind of doing the easier things first, and that is like no social media, no TV, no nothing. Give yourself an hour of just breathing or reading something that's peaceful, nothing that's triggering, and allowing your nervous system to reset to a place that you're going to bed. And then there's different kinds of somatic tools that you can use, breath work, that can also help reset your nervous system. This stuff takes time. That is a symptom of a bigger problem, right? And once we solve that bigger problem, then sleep becomes easy. Let me try a tool with you right now, right? I can tell you got your hand on your chin, and your mind is going 1,000 miles an hour, right? Cool, that's great. We're gonna accept what that is, right? This is what I want you to do. I want you to take your thumb and finger, and I want you to tap them for me as fast as you can, just as fast as you can. Cool. And I want you to keep your breathing slow, but keep moving your fingers as fast as you can. Right? And I want you to take the trauma, all the worries, all the anxieties, the stuff that comes up when you're feeling safe, right? All the things you couldn't process want to come out at night. Good. All right, they're there. They're part of you. But all we're going to do is we're going to go to the observer role, but we're also going to set a boundary, right? I'm not going to have a flashback right now. I'm going to acknowledge that it's there, right? And I want to keep your breathing slow. And everyone can do this if you want. And I want you to slow your fingers down a little bit and go a little bit slower. And go even slower. And then I want you to stop. And how do you feel now?
Same.
Okay, so we can probably do that a few more times, because it's just like part of it is acknowledging that I am feeling what I'm feeling, right? When you're trying to go to sleep and you're going to play the savior role and just kind of ignore your feelings, right? It's not going to help us process those things. But it is the trauma that's kind of keeping you up at night. And waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning is part of our sleep cycle as we go into REM. And once our minds are finding, like, because our minds do not want to hang on to this trauma. They don't. Our bodies don't want to hang on to this trauma. If you just do a breathing exercise for me, I'm going to see if we can calm your nervous system a bit more. But if you just kind of keep your breathing really, really slow, right? And one of the things we're going to do is we overbreathe, right? And you're going to find just by slowing your breathing down that you're going to start to calm your nervous system a little bit, right? The other thing I want you to do is I want you to exhale 2 to 3 times longer than you inhale. Right? Because what you're going to notice is when you inhale, your heart rate goes up. You put your hand on your thing, and you can notice when I inhale, my heart rate goes up. And when I exhale, my heart rate goes down. Cool. But breathe like that for 5 minutes, and all of a sudden your heart rate is going to go down. And that's going to help reset your nervous system, get your limbic system back on track. But yeah, sleep is a symptom, and you can try different things. Hot baths are really good at resetting your nervous system, and it's a part of it is sweat therapy. And if you have a sauna, saunas are really good for releasing, because you're gonna, when you're triggered, your brain is gonna shoot adrenaline and cortisol, right? And a thought is enough to trigger those reactions. Our brain doesn't know the difference between a thought and a reaction. Those are all things that kind of do something. So let's do like and a quick EMDR tactic, right? I just want you to kind of sit with your shoulders back and your chin up, right? If we sit like this, we have a tendency to feel that way. But as long as our chin is at a 10-degree angle, it's going to change our body posture, right? And just keep your breathing slow and have your hands on your thighs facing down. And I want you to turn them so your hands on your thighs facing up, and then facing down, and then facing up. And all I want you to do is I'm going to ask you a question. You have a preference. What feels better, hands up or hands down? And there's no right or wrong answer. But I want you to know, because I keep saying, it's just there's a part of you that's already healed. I asked you a question. There's no right or wrong answer. If your hands feel better up, then keep them up. If they feel better down, feel better down. But there's a part of you that already answered that question, right? Now what all I want you to do is I want you to look to your left and just find a spot on the wall, right? And then I want you to turn your head and look to the right, right? And just find another spot on the wall. And then look to your left. And then look to your right. And look to your left. And look to your right. And I'm going to keep doing this. You can do it at that pace. Just keep going. And I'm going to talk to you through what's actually happening here, right? As you're kind of looking left and right, what happens with our minds is our minds will take us into flashbacks and they'll take us into the past, right? We keep going left and right. And when you kind of anchor into this room, when you find a spot on the left, you find a spot on the right, you're looking for danger, right? There's no danger here. Is it over there? Is it over there? Is it over there? Right? There's another part of our brain, and it's located in the neocortex. And what they found with the EMDR, and it's just by looking left and right, what you're doing is our memories, they don't have a timestamp, right? And because where's our trauma stored? It's stored in our limbic system, stored in our hippocampus, it's stored in our brainstem, right? So as we're kind of looking left and right, we're putting a timestamp on that, right? Most of our flashbacks and our traumas are stuck in these 30-second to 60-second loops, right? They just keep going, playing again and again and again and again, right? It'll take you to the past, or they'll make you anxious about the future. And just by looking left and looking right and keeping your breathing really, really slow, you're anchoring yourself back into this moment. And there's no danger here. There's nothing on your left. There's nothing on your right. All you need to do is look left and look right and look left and look right. And just keep your breathing really slow. When we hyperventilate, we will trigger ourselves. Right? And how are you feeling now, John?
Nice.
Nice. Cool. And there's other good. So I want you to see that there are all sorts of tools that we can use, that we can help you with all of those other things. I'll give you a couple other limbic system resets that might help. Right. One of the things you'll notice is just like, and if you go into the wild, right? If you see wolves in the wild, and they'll be hunting some prey, and all the young ones will just be like eating it all up, and the sun's going down, and they're all anxious and nervous and everything. The pack leader will do one thing to settle his pack, and what he'll do is yawn. It's like, right? You don't actually have to yawn. All you have to do is unlock your jaw, right? And that's going to trigger part of our limbic system that's in the back, the vagus nerve, and it'll trigger that. You can do that a couple times, and you can just notice what that feels like. All of a sudden, you're releasing more dopamine into your system. You're releasing the rest and digest, right? Because right now you got two systems. You've got the sympathetic nervous system, which is fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, right? That's a reactionary state. That's lower triangle stuff. Right? We need to move to the upper triangle, which is our parasympathetic nervous system. And our parasympathetic nervous system is the rest and digest. In order to heal, in order to digest our food, we need to rest and digest. So that's one. That's another technique. I mean, you can find vagus nerve endings here. There's some in the back of our ears. One of the things I find works really well for vagus nerve resets is take an ice pack and put it on your neck on the left side. Well, it doesn't have to be left side or right side, but it's just like start with one, keep it there for 5 minutes, and then move it to the other side, right? And the other thing is, it's like we were doing that left and right. Just do this for me. Just cross your arms, and all I want you to do is tap left and tap right, tap left and tap right, and tap left, and tap right. And the interesting thing about the cross-armed, this thing, right, it's just so your left hand is actually controlled by your right brain, your right hand is controlled by your left brain, right? So by tapping back and forth, you're activating your left brain, then you're moving to your right. You're activating your left, you're moving to your right. Left, right, left, right. And just keep doing that. I want you to see what happens when you go a bit faster, right? And I want you to go a little bit slower. And then find a pace that just kind of works right for you. Right? So we're starting using your limbic system to just kind of reset your nervous system. We're starting to use that vagus nerve, which actually gets shut down. And when we're dealing with trauma, what we have is, the traumas will usually be in our right brain. Our rational brain will fight the emotions. Right? So if we go from left brain to right brain, left brain to right brain, there's a part of our brain that kind of communicates to both of our brains, and these exercises kind of help kind of grow that. I call it the corpus columbus, because it's like Columbus. It's an uncharted territory for trauma victims, right? It's just a part of our brain that we're not used to using, a part of our brain that talks to everything. It's actually called a corpus columbus or something. I mispronounced it. It has a different name, but the whole thing is, it's just like, all right, cool. We're doing that. You don't have to do it on your arms. You can actually tap your left thigh and your right thigh. Left, right, left, right, left, right. And you can tap your feet. As long as you're doing something cross-body, you're activating your left brain, you're activating your right brain, left brain, right brain. When we look to the left, we're going to activate the right brain. When we look to the right, we're going to activate the left brain. So it's just like all of these little trauma things work through. You're also going to find things like yoga, body movement, somatic experiences, things like that will help reset your nervous system, and just unlock your jaw a few times, and suddenly you're going to feel it actually kick in, right? And breathe slower than you exhale, longer than you inhale, and you just slow your heart rate down, right? And then that's what we're trying to do, right? Because when you're in the lower triangle, I don't have the lower triangle here, right? You're going to feel like, I'm a victim, I need to sleep, right? I'm going to try to play the savior role or avoid everything or any of those things. Then I'm going to persecute myself for sleeping, right? So that's drama, right? So all we can do is we can go to the upper triangle, observe, I can't sleep, right? We can just kind of set a boundary and notice that there's a part of you that's triggered, right? There's a fear that needs to be faced. What's the fear? What if I feel whatever it is that I'm feeling? What happens if I release those emotions? What kind of calm system am I going to get? But sleep is very complicated, right? I do monitor sleep with all my clients, and also ask people to track their dreams, because I've got hypnotherapy training, and our subconscious speaks to us in metaphors. And if it speaks to us in metaphors, then, the dreams are metaphors. They're not always what you think they mean. Right? They mean something completely different. But it is a way for us to just kind of unpack what's going on in the background and bring what's unconscious to the conscious. And in that space, we can release a little bit of it, right? Because so often it feels like we're a Coke bottle. Like you take our Coke bottle and you shake it and shake it, and it's full of pressure. That's our brain, right? If we take it off, it's like, it's going to make a big mess. But if we just kind of do these little practices now and again where we just release the pressure, and then take a break and then release the pressure, release the pressure, release the pressure, release the pressure. You do that enough times, you can take the top off without exploding and not getting overwhelmed with your emotions, right? But the work is deeper than that. It's gonna take a while to work through that. That is a symptom.
The comments you made about hot baths, that has helped me a lot.
Good.
A lot.
Good. Good. You'll find a lot of stuff, just on my feed. It's just helping people process those emotions because it's not a language a lot of us use. So it's just kind of like, those daily things. But you're free to set up a call with my call center, Darl, and let's just book a meeting. I'll spend an hour with you. I'll talk you through what you need, and we'll see what kind of program can help. Whether it's group, whether it's deeper work, but it does take time. It does take a commitment. It's not something, if you're not ready for doing that, if things aren't bad enough, then that's okay. When they are, it's just like that. That's when the work starts, right? I think Pamela's unmuted.
No, I made a comment earlier. I'm working on my master's to be a licensed mental health counselor, and we don't discuss the personality disorders at all in college. And I've talked to other clinicians, and they say the same thing. So there doesn't seem to be like a lot of people that would be skilled in treating it if somebody were to go for treatment.
Yeah, no, it is a very, and 10% of my clients are actually therapists, right? And especially if the background is cognitive behavioral therapy. Cognitive behavioral therapy can sometimes, with some trauma sufferers, actually make things worse, right? Keeping talking about traumas again and again and again can re-trigger clients. It can also help, depends on what skill set that they have. But yeah, even the therapists that I work with, it's just like, they some of their programs, they spent 3 months talking about all personality disorders, right? And then and people are like questioning, so why do therapists need a guy like me? Well, it's just like, well, if you think about it, they're perfect targets, right? If I was a narcissist and I was looking to target somebody, I would target a therapist because they're kind, compassionate people. They're understanding. They want to help people. Their hearts are pure. All things that narcissists want to eat, right? They're kind of like emotional cannibals, right? They will take that and they will just, they think that if they can rip your heart out and chew it out, that suddenly they're going to have a heart. It doesn't work. Doesn't work. So they're going to rip out somebody else's heart, hoping the next heart will be the one that gives them a life. But no, it is specialty training. Gabor Mate, where I got some training from. He's another Canadian. He's doing a lot of experimental work on that. IFS, I think, is something that's really incredible because we are made up of parts, right? There's a part of us that is hurt. There's a part of us that is wounded. There's an inner child part that has a story to tell, right? And so what if we listened instead of told it to shut up? What if we listened to it? What if we held it? What if we held ourselves when we were feeling our worst? What would happen? Those parts would start talking to us, right? There's Gestalt therapy where it's just like you're talking to an empty chair. Hey, how you doing? Right? And you're just kind of like, and you can actually put the hurt part on the chair, right? And sit and have a conversation with it. And you can journal it, because that allows you to observe your own thoughts and your own beliefs and your own emotions, right? The way IFS therapy works, I don't know if I have a drawing of it anywhere, but it's just like there's a sense of self that is unbroken in everybody. We all have a sense of self that is healed. But what happens is we got two parts that are linked, right? You got the exiles, which is what they call it, and all of this overlaps. Like even in Freudian theory, everything kind of overlaps. But you know, you've got the exiles, or the wounded children in us that are carrying these wounds. But you know, we don't want to release them, right? So we have a manager that kind of comes in and just manages our symptoms, the ones that the voices that kind of keep us going, tell us everything's going to be okay, right? And then we've got firefighters. Those are the reactionary parts. Like I was talking to John about, you know, why it's so hard to sleep, because you know, as soon as you try to lie down, there's a firefighter that's going to come up, and we can have a conversation with that firefighter. What is it that's making you anxious? And the firefighters will make us drink. They'll make us get angry. They'll make us do all sorts of things, right? Addiction, like even if you use everything overlaps itself, right? You've got the upper triangle, which is kind of like the sense of self, the observing ego. You've got the boundary self, and you also got the part of us that's loving and compassionate to our own wounds. And then you've got like the firefighters, which will persecute. You got the managers, which will help us avoid, and then the victim part is that exiled part, you know, that inner child that's carrying those deep wounds, and we can just kind of start having conversations with them. First we need to reset our nervous system, which is what I was working with John on, and then we can actually go in and actually work through those things. Right? With hypnotherapy, we can just raise your brainwave frequencies. The trauma exists in a delta brainwave or a beta brainwave frequency, right? Fight, flight, freeze is in beta, right? But we also have the observing ego, so we can move our minds into an alpha frequency, right? In alpha frequencies, we all are in alpha frequency. When you write a list of things to do, when you got to go to work and you got 8 things to do, your brain needs to go in an alpha frequency. If you're in a beta frequency, you're not able to accomplish tasks. So you can move your frequencies up. And then we can go even further. We can take you to a theta brainwave frequency. And theta is just kind of like, you know, when you're listening to music and it's just kind of flowing through you, or you're drawing an art, or you're writing a novel or poetry and you just lose time, or you just get lost to a movie, or just think that's a theta frequency, right? And then a lot of the trauma work that I do just kind of move everyone into a delta frequency, right? And it's an awake state where you can look at what happened to you. You can use your imagination. You can put your memories onto a TV screen. And if they're
Do you do any
go ahead.
attachment work? Because like I know, like, so the narcissist would have the avoidant attachment, and most of us have like an anxious. So do you help the people learn to have more secure attachments?
Yeah, so that's exactly what IFS does, right? Because what we're trying to do is reparent ourselves. And that's why it's just like when I take on a client, it's like you got to commit to a 6 months to a year process, because we have a lot of, and you could be in a relationship with somebody for decades, right? It's not going to take decades to recover. But it is going to take, you know, it's like my immersion program is 3 hours a week if you and me, right? And we need to go through these abuse cycles backwards, and we need to reset your nervous system. That secure attachment figure, you know who that's going to be? It's going to be you. You're going to be that secure attachment figure. And when these triggers come up, you go, oh, there you are. All right. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. That's Ho'oponopono, by the way. And Ho'oponopono is a really powerful tool of just kind of bringing that up. And even if everyone just kind of repeats to themselves right now. So you can think of a time that you were triggered. There's a part of you that was a reactionary. You just say, I love you. I'm sorry. You know, please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. And when you say I love you to yourself, ask yourself, how much do I believe that? Right? When Deborah says I love you, how much do you believe that? Do you believe that 10%, 20%, 50%? Whatever it is, notice that's the part. How much of yourself is there? Cool. If it's 10%, cool, you have 10% awareness. Great. You know, I'm sorry. And you can ask that part. You know, if you want, if it helps, put them in a chair. If it helps, just kind of feel where they are in their body, right? The body keeps a score. There's all sorts of research of how our bodies store traumas. So have a conversation. If it's in my heart that's broken, like, cool, I'm sorry. What am I sorry for? What do you want me to be sorry for? Ask the broken heart what it wants to do, what it makes you feel sorry for. And it could say, yeah, this remorse or this regret or this. And then you can look at it with love and compassion. Please forgive me. I didn't know that I got sucked into this relationship. I didn't know any of those things are happening. Right? But thank you. Thank you for coming forward. Even that little brief conversation that we had now took courage. Right? Took vulnerability. Brene Brown has a great book on vulnerability. Right? In order to access those parts requires vulnerability. But we can't access vulnerability unless we create a sense of safety. Right? And you can see in a group like this, it's just like there's a lot of safety. We can process a lot of different emotions, and we can observe, and we can hold, and observe, and hold, and just keep going through those processes, right? And there's no straight path, right? That's why I have so much training in so many different trauma modalities, because I can't say one thing is going to work. We start with one thing, and we'll move to another, and move to another. And a lot of my tools, and a lot of my practices, they're actually mashups, right? Keith and Carol will tell you about, the countdown, the 5, the 4, the 3, the 2, the 1, right? The anchors. But even in that process, like using anchors, it's just like, our brains store things. Maybe I have a picture. I always find it's easier to talk in pictures. All right, here we go. Wasn't planning on going through all of this, but because you're studying all of this, you kind of just gonna make it quick and gonna make it easy for you, right? This is the triune brain model, and you know that the triune brain model is an outdated model because the brain is far more complex than that. But from a simplistic way of looking at it, let's think of our brain as 3 chunks. You got your monkey mind. Our monkey mind is connected to, and remember I was working with John. John, if you're still there, it's just like this is the red lines here. This is your sympathetic nervous system, your fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. Monkey mind is fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. If you're in your monkey mind, you have 4 options, 4 ways of handling any problem. You can fight it, you can run away, you can ignore it, you can flee, or freeze, or you can fawn. Only things, 4 things, right? And then what happens is the traumas, they're stored in our limbic brain or our mammalian brain. They're also stored in our hippocampus, also stored a bit of in our brain stem. And that's what these red dots are. These are all your traumas, right? So if you actually look at those, and I got little circles around them. So that represents kind of like the manager parts that are fighting it, and then we got that other layer of firefighters. And each thing, the one manager might be actually managing 3 or 4 exiles. So it's just like once we kind of work through the work, all of those other things. But then these blue dots. Right? These blue dots are memories that are connected to non-traumatized event, right? I want you to think of the last time that you held a puppy, right? Cool. You have that memory, right? When was the last time that you were barefoot looking at a beach? Wow, you have that memory. Our traumas they're stored right here, and the trauma's right next to it, right? So it's just like if we have anchors, if we have memories that we can kind of go to, right? And we can make that an anchor, holding a puppy. There's your anchor. Tap your fingers together twice. Gives it a somatic thing. You got a memory, you got the emotion, and then that'll get you into your mammalian brain. You tap that together, and then if you start using your anchors regularly, you'll do that. But even the anchoring exercise is mixed with breath work. It's mixed with somatics. It's mixed with, EMDR. It's mixed. There's 5 or 6 different strategies that are all dumped into one exercise because I don't know which one is going to work. It is kind of like the theme chemotherapy of trauma work. I'm just going to dump everything on it, and maybe it's the slow breathing that's going to work for you. Maybe it's seeing numbers, right? Why do we have numbers in meditations and counting and all of those other things? Because if this is where our stomas are stored, and the whole thing with the mammalian brain, which I find really interesting, it's not biased. Like our brain is negatively biased because we remember more of the negative things than we do the positive things. Dr. Seligman did a whole study on it takes 5 positive emotions or 5 positive thoughts to replace 1 negative one, right? That's a survival brain. And we grew up with that's a 4 million year old brain, and we needed that. And the only reason we're alive today is because of that 4 million year old brain. So we can go into those parts, and we can just kind of create other memories that are linked to things, right? And right now, if you slow your breathing down and remember being on a beach, right? Remember falling asleep. with a baby in your arms, or remember any of those things. The mammalian brain is non-biased. It's just a hard drive, right? If we access it from the back of our mind with fear, it'll just show us the red dots, right? But if we can go to our neocortex and look backwards, we have access to all our memories, right? And it's done from a non-judgmental part. We have not a lot of trauma stored in our neocortex. That exercise that we did with the looking left and looking right, right? Like if this is your brain, I keep showing all of these things because I like pictures. I'm very visual, very graphic, right? If this is your spinal cord, and then the traumas are stored in the brainstem, the hippocampus, and the limbic system, right? When you look left and look right, there's a part of our brain that has a clock, right? Our traumas don't have clocks. There's no timestamps to say that it's not happening now. Looking left and looking right, looking left and looking right, looking left and looking right is going to put timestamps on this moment, on this memory. And then this is our neocortex, the front of our brain. And, a lot of the tapping that we were kind of doing and slowing down your thoughts. That's something that the neocortex kind of does. That helps just kind of slow down our thoughts. So that's our neocortex. And only the neocortex can read, write, and count. Why is journaling such a powerful way of recovery? Because our mammalian brain doesn't know how to read or write or count, and it doesn't know how to, the monkey brain has no idea how to read or write or count. So the fact that we're sitting there and we're writing things down means we've engaged our neocortex, right? And with all my anchoring exercises, they're always linked to numbers, right? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Because these parts of our brain don't know all of that. In order to heal ourselves, we need to start using our neocortex more, and then witnessing our traumas and all of those other things. Because you were talking about, attachment figures and all of those other things. You know who's the attachment figure? It's part of your brain. That's your part of your brain. Because once that part can look at the trauma without reliving it, can understand the story, and, Keith and I have done a lot of flashback work, where it's just like, yeah, we can take a flashback. The problem with a flashback, like these little memories, is like they're stored in 30-second or 60-second chunks, right? And they just replay. And if I showed you a clip of a movie of a father and his son, walking down a field, and just left it at that, you would think, oh, what a beautiful movie. Then I could tell you that's Jack Nicholson, and that's from the movie Shining, right? That little clip doesn't tell you the whole movie, right? So what we do is with flashback work especially, it's just like, all right, so you have a flashback. But the memory itself, like the flashback is the entry point, the memory itself, what happened 30 seconds before that? What happened 30 seconds after? What happened half an hour before? What happened half an hour after? Find a beginning of that memory, find the end of the memory. The beginning of the memory is not a traumatic memory. The end of the memory is resolved. Where we got the flashback is here. So if we can kind of open it up and then see it from the bigger picture, we take a lot of that sting away. And the more that we kind of do that, and we replay it back and forth, 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 until the brain short circuits, because it's just like, can't. That flashback now has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And 3 points of it, right? The beginning, the middle, and the end. And the flashback is usually at the 3/4 mark. That 3/4 of that memory is not traumatizing. It's only that 30-second to 1 second thing. Right? And the other way to kind of look at it is most of your brain is actually fine, right? Most of it is fine. I get when we do the brain scans and stuff, our hippocampus is all messed up. This is our amygdala. Our amygdala shoots out way more chemicals than it needs to, right? Which means, like even John, it's just like, when you have a thought and you get triggered, because your amygdala is swollen, you're going to get more adrenaline than the average person will, right? So we know that when adrenaline hits our system, it's going to take an hour for it to release, right? And that's with breathing exercises, that's with pacing, with journaling, whatever it is. It's going to take an hour for just the chemicals that hit your thing to come up. And then we've got this blue system, and that's your rest and digest. And there are tools that we can engage that more, right? The ice packs on the neck are really good ways of just getting this system more and more online. But if you actually look, and the reason I say most of your brain is fine, right? The problem with our brain is just like when we have the traumas, our brain will just kind of give us the trauma because, if I worry about it and it doesn't happen, it's because I worried about it. All right. But if you don't worry about it and it doesn't happen, it's like, oh, well, then what does that mean? It doesn't work that way. But if you look at this chart here, if this is your life, right? And it doesn't matter how old you are, insert age. This is time, right? On average, we sleep 8 hours a day, right? So 33% of your life has been asleep. You're not even conscious, right? 33%. You've been perfectly safe because you slept. And most of us work for a living as well, right? So it's just like work is just part of life. There's no real traumas there, a little bit, but it's like, for the most part, it's like work is, so 2/3 of your life already we've just scratched off as trauma-free. But then you do have to brush your teeth. You got to shower, you got to do your laundry, you got to do the cooking, you got to do all of those other things. If we look at all the traumas, it's probably just a tiny little sliver of time when we actually look at the grand scope of our life. Those things. But our minds don't know this, right? That's why I like looking left, looking right, the breathing, the tapping, doing different kind of limbic activations, all of those other things that can help. And then, it's just like working with those inner child parts. You have the observing ego, right? The observing ego lives in your neocortex, and you can observe your traumas from a bit of a distance, from a bit of a gap, if you can reset your nervous system and you're in a good place, right? Trauma work without, doing this first, which is why it takes a long time, will re-traumatize you. There's been so many people that I've had to treat that went to a really bad EMDR specialist, right? Because one meeting just forced them to relive these traumas, which isn't helpful. EMDR is a very effective tool, but with the caveat is that you have to have a really good practitioner. You have to have a trusting relationship with them, and it needs to be done over several sessions. It's not done one and done. It's like with any powerful tool. It can have all sorts of kickback. But anyway, that was more than I was planning on talking about. But is that helping you, Deborah? Like, is this making sense to you? There's gobs of research.
I work with kids who have suffered significant trauma, so some of that was helpful too. I'm thinking one kid in particular. And,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, for the most part, it's just like you need to be the observer. And one of the things that works really well with clients, and kids are a really interesting way of looking at it, is if you look at, because people are like, how do you deal with a narcissist, right? How do you practice gray rock? How do you do all of those other things? And what are the examples that I use? And it's mostly just because it's memorable. If you ever look at kindergarten teacher, when they're dealing with kids suck at emotional regulation. They're freaking out, and then they're on top of the world, and they suck at it. But what does a really good kindergarten teacher do, right? They're always calm. They have a disposition. They don't react. Billy took my truck, and you're just like, oh, did he? Well, that must make you feel upset. Yeah. Hey, Billy, did you take his truck? It's my truck. It's got my name on it. Oh. He says it's his truck. It is his truck, but I was playing with it. But you can see how kids in the drama kind of play out. But having that calm voice and just kind of, repeating back exactly what you hear with kids is really important. And say how they say it and do all of those other things. But, if you're triggered, they pick it up on it very, very quickly. Mm-hmm. So with kids, it's like no matter what they say or what they do, it's just kind of like talk slowly. Talk like a kindergarten teacher. Oh, that looks like it's upsetting to you, isn't it? Right? And if you really need, I wish that the kindergarten teachers would just let trauma therapists just watch how they deal with kids. I think that would be, it'd be great. There's a master's thesis for you. Trauma therapy, but that's also the inner child work, right? The way that you talk to your wounded inner children is the same way a kindergarten teacher would talk to an upset toolkit. Because as soon as we start to rationalize, as soon as we start to negotiate, as soon as we start to make deals with our subconscious, it's just like you have one manager managing another manager, and you end up making your inner system far more complicated than it needs to be. And just with one conscious breath, one step back, one witnessing, all of those things can kind of step back.
Please stop.
Hey, Sandra.
Hi.
I like your dog. Oh, you went on mute.
I said they're trying to help me here.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, I have a dog, too. Every so often you'll see, like, he'll walk across behind one of my videos or something. But he's a 110-pound Mastiff. His head is bigger
My neighbor
than
has one.
And he
Nice dog.
sleeps 20 hours a day. Keith's met him. He sleeps 20 hours a day. But he'll put his head on my desk, he'll just be like, all right. How you doing? And dogs are great for regulating the nervous system. Taking your dog for a walk every single day, like I do that all the time. Check out what the dog checks out, right?
They've definitely been my angels, I tell you. They've helped out a lot.
Yeah.
I do have a question, though.
Mhm.
In looking over the drama, no drama diagram that you were giving,
Yep.
I know a lot of it is on perspective, of course, from our vision that we're seeing it. Well, like when I'm trying to not engage, because my thing was I reacted instead of responding to
Yep.
the abuse.
Mhm.
And so, unfortunately, that left it to where my kids, who are all adults, saw it as me just like going crazy with it. And I've been married for 32 years.
Mhm.
And 9 months ago, he just decided that was it, but then told the kids that I had a chemical imbalance and all this different stuff. And
Oh, I hear that all the time.
yeah, and so the hardest part has been that I became the scapegoat,
Mhm.
and I didn't see that coming at all.
Mhm.
So my thing in trying to come to a point of healing is that when I'm trying to establish boundaries, not rules, but boundaries for me,
Mhm.
and where I'm practicing gray rocking, that they accuse me of like what stonewalling.
Yeah.
And then
I love that. Yeah.
when I'm trying to say, well, let's just breathe and things, let's calm down, or we'll, it's just like right now I'm just feeling that it doesn't matter. Even though it's been 9 months, it just seems like it doesn't matter what I say or do, that it's still on me. And I know often, even like we had done a little marriage counseling before he left, and the marriage counselor said, that it seems, because I continued with him afterwards, and he said, well, I mean, it's kind of like you were the only adult in the room. And I hear that, but then I kind of think, well, is that part of like what they brought up, the anxious attachment?
Mhm.
That you have to be the only adult in the room
Yeah.
to do stuff. And so like right now when I'm trying to have where I'm trying not to, react to it and trying to get a response, it feels like it doesn't matter if it's been an hour or 2 hours, that they then find where is that button. And as much as I try to guard it, sometimes they just still get it.
Mhm.
So how do we navigate that balance of trying to be the no drama and then getting pulled into it even when you don't want to, that like,
Mhm.
because I don't want to be apart from my family, but at the same time, right now, I can't be with them either.
Okay. Well, I want you to notice you got emotions coming up, right? So I want you to slow your breathing down. I want you to notice where these emotions are, right? Because there's a lot of stories here, right? And you're trying to figure everything out with your stories. But like really through the trauma work, it is an emotional thing. So I just want you to slow down your breathing for me. And I want you to see where these feelings are. Are they in your chest? Are they in your arms? In your stomach? In your gut? Where are they? In your neck. Right?
Yeah.
So it's like we carry trauma in our neck. We carry trauma in our tensions, right? And I just want you to kind of slow your breathing down because we need to go to the observer role, right? Because quite often, and the whole thing is, and I'm really guilty because people ask me all of these complex questions, and when I answer them, you realize you don't need to know that answer. Like you don't need to know the specifics, right? Because we're going to feel our way through all of this, right? So I want you to just notice I got tension in my neck, right? And what you're dealing with makes sense, right? So I want you to imagine it's just like you're me and I'm you. And I'm telling you the exact same story, right? That makes sense, right? It makes absolute sense, right? You're nodding your head. That's the observer. I see my own drama. I see how I persecute myself, and I'm trying to get somebody to save me, and I'm trying to do all of these other things. And being an adult is hard. Being an adult is actually quite lonely, right? Because, it's just like, especially with codependency and stuff, it's just like there is a part of the trauma recovery process where we actually have to cope with our own loneliness, right? But there's also bravery in there. It's like if you're not afraid to be alone, then you don't need somebody else to do all of those things. So if you just kind of look at the story that you told me, right? You're talking about reactive abuse, right? What is it that your core child actually wanted love and belonging, right? And what did they get? You got manipulation. You got baited into stuff. And you can look up all the research. The cognitive part might actually help you, looking up reactive abuse, how they're triggering you, how they're triggering you, how they're triggering you. And the interesting thing about the drama triangle is like you still fall into it, right? You will fall into it. The goal is to notice when we're into it and then try to go back, try to set a boundary, try to do anything. I want you to notice the difference between an assertive no and a calm no, right? I kind of mentioned what that is. A calm no is far more powerful than an assertive no. No, hell no! Right? There's nothing there. It's just like you ask me something. I'm like, no, not going to happen. Right? So narcissists are going to be on the drama triangle. You said no to me. And they're going to label that as you're persecuting me. Let them. Right? Mel Robbins has a great book called Let Them. Right? Let them.
Who is the author?
Mel Robbins. And it's new. I haven't read it yet, but it's on my reading list. But I know basically what it is. It's just kind of let them, right? That is an upper triangle position. If somebody's going to call you names, let them, right? If somebody's going to persecute you, you're only a victim if you accept the victim role, right? Jesus carrying the cross down to his own death. If he accepted I'm a victim, he'd be crying the entire time. It's like, no, I will not be the victim of this story. And if you choose to be the victim, then you are. But if you choose not to be the victim, then you're not, right? It becomes what's the perspective. And just, I know, and it's hard at first. Like, it's really hard practicing Grey Rock. It's really hard when somebody calls you something. All right, I'm going to give you an example. This will be really cool, right? So, I've got, I had 10,000 views on my feed last year, or 10 million views on my feed last year. I'm going to do a post where I'm going to say, Sandra is an apple tree. She's an apple tree. She's absolutely an apple tree. I want everyone to know that Sandra's an apple tree, right? And, you might think that that's absurd, but it's not 100% inaccurate. You probably have 60% of the same DNA as an apple tree, right? Like, it's not inaccurate, right? There's a part of it that's actually true. But the whole thing is it's not 100% true. It's a lie. It's a belief system, right? So there you go. I'm going to put a billboard out right in front of your house. It's going to be a big arrow. Sandra's an apple tree. It's the same thing as somebody saying that you're an uncaring person, or you're undoing this, or you're undoing that. It's not 100% true, right? And if you breathe into your throat, which might be why, the energy is kind of locked there, I want you to know what's true. What is true. Right? Yes, in the past you were reactionary. Yes, in the past you were baited. Yes, you're going to still fall into the drama triangle once in a while. It's going to happen. Forgive yourself. You didn't know. What you know now, you didn't know yesterday, right?
Right.
Which means, cool. Let's roadmap it, What happened? Oh, there was, I celebrate my failure, right? I'm going to celebrate my setback. Cool. What is it that you want, right? I want to
Right.
be a loving mom. I want to be a caring person. I want to contribute to my community. I want to, all of those things. What's getting in the way? Smear campaigns. Smear campaigns are one of those things. It's like, let them. You know how much energy it takes to convince everyone around you that you're unstable and that you have a chemical imbalance, right? It's just
Well,
like,
yeah, with having reaction, yeah.
yeah. So we're like,
And that's part of, when I have tried to study more about this, and I was actually listening to something with codependency, and how they link one into the other, and then I heard where it was talking about having the reaction to, and I was like, oh my gosh, that sounds just like me. And the more I heard it, I was like, oh, that is me. And I was, reacting, not responding. And I told my kids that. I said, I'm sorry, because they were like, oh, you just get too much. And I said, you're right. I was like a banshee. I was, when I remember it, I'm like, oh, was that me? That's awful, But then I told him, I said, I'm sorry that I was reacting when I should have been responding. And, I'm trying to do better with that and stuff. But there's still, even after all this time, I mean, we don't talk that much. I've probably only talked to my daughter 4 times in the last 9 months. And,
how old is your daughter?
She's 21.
Okay, yeah, and that's going to be a tough time. But this time that you have away from her is the time for you to reset. And when you meet her again, you can call the recovery process like I have my logo is a phoenix right there. But it's just like you can look at the recovery process as I'm just use the metaphor of the caterpillar on the leaf, right? So you got a caterpillar on the leaf, and it's trying to be the best caterpillar that it can be. Right? And you're the best caterpillar as you can be, right? Because you're triggered, you're reactionary, you got this, you got, codependency, all of those things we can put on the roadmap, and we can get you through all of those things one by one. Every setback, we're just going to pop it back into the roadmap and keep going through it. So it's just like, yeah, all right, so you're the caterpillar on the leaf, but at some point, you're like, I can't be this reactionary, codependent, anxious person anymore. I wasn't born to be this way. I wasn't always this way. I was in an environment that, I got brainwashed into it again and again and again and again. And then that became my reality, and then I got used to it, right? I got used to those abuse cycles. So we start going through them backwards. So what you need to do is just, why the recovery process is so long. It's like, all right, so first we start to cocoon, right? You build a thing around you. And if they want to smear you, let them smear you. If they want to tell everyone that blah, 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 let them. If you go out there trying to be defensive, right, you're going to sound even more crazy, right? Let them. It's like, oh, okay, whatever. And every smear campaign I've ever seen always falls apart within 2 to 5 years, right? Some people never really take the time to understand. But it takes a lot of effort to lie about somebody and all of those other things again and again and again and again. And then as soon as you talk to somebody and you don't act the way that they projected you, and all of a sudden it's just like the whole thing falls apart. And then you're going to realize they lied about somebody else and somebody else and somebody else. And eventually the narcissist's credibility just tanks, right? And it just kind of takes time. But anyway, it's just like, all right, so we've got you're in the cocoon, right? And you've got all of these survival strategies you've learned as a caterpillar, but those actually don't work in the real world. So if you actually go into the cocoon, what does a caterpillar do? It dissolves, right? It dissolves into like a mush and an oil. But the reality is, like the butterfly that comes out of that cocoon has the exact same cells and DNA and everything It went into the cocoon. It already had it, right? I was talking to Deborah about, that self is already healed. Right? All we got to do is we put ourselves back together, same pieces, just different order, right? Those traumatic times, those times I got overreactionary, it's like that happened in the past. Absolutely, it did. What that taught me to do? And it's like, it taught me that I had limbic system hijack. You can give it a medical name if you want. It's just like I didn't know when my adrenaline and cortisol shot up. And I know I wasn't using my neocortex. I was fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. You know what? With those four reactions, right? If you realize that there's 10,000 or 10 million solutions to every single problem, you can't get those from fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. What you get that from is your neocortex. You play the long game. You look at what else happens, right? And you can solve every single problem. It just takes more time using your neocortex. But if it's a reactionary response, then they're going to react, you're going to react, and it's just that abuse cycle. The trauma just kind of keeps going through. Set a boundary, set some time, figure out a plan. Take sometimes, and the whole thing with narcissists is and this is the best way to kind of deal with them, is if you're playing a game of chess, don't play to win, play to draw, bore them to death, don't give up any ground, or if you do give up ground, take ground somewhere else, but bore them to death. Don't engage. Right? And as you kind of go through this process, because a lot of those stories, they probably come back from your childhood, right? Somebody says something about you. You probably heard that when you were a kid somewhere. And then there's that young part of you, like I was talking with Deborah, it's just that inner child. It's just really reactionary, and it just needs to be held. It needs to be seen. And when it comes up, as we go through the abuse cycle backwards, they'll still come up. But the whole thing is, you're not in the face your fears thing for as long. You're not in the other phases for as long, and you just got to keep going through it. Is that helpful?
Hey, Miles, this is Carol.
Hey, Carol.
Go ahead. Hey, I just want to say something. I mean, I'm over about 2.5 years out now, and as Miles knows, I was probably the most reactive, blubbering idiot for the first, at least, probably 9 months. But what I really found that changed me around is to start loving myself and start respecting myself. Whenever I got that back in me, I can look back now at my narcissist. It's like actually reading a cartoon comic. That's what it is in my mind now. Mm-hmm. That it's actually laughable. And with my narcissist, I did not have children, but I do have grown children, and of course I had to endure the smear campaign, but, whether it be your children or a friend, the narcissist is always going to have their flying monkeys and everybody and put everybody down and try to, make you look like the worst person on earth. But like Miles said, they're eventually going to see through the crap. And, because you're going to have the inner strength if you start loving yourself and respecting yourself and setting your boundaries to where you're not letting them blow you up every time you hear something. You just ignore it. It'll eventually explode on them. I mean, and the true people in your life that love and respect you will eventually see it for what it is. So, I mean, I think you're going to go through a rough time. I did. But it's going to go away. I mean, your true kids will eventually see your true self. And they're, like Miles said, the narcissist is going to have too many holes in their stories, and it's going to blow up in their face versus yours.
Oh, I'm sorry, Sandra, you're muted. There you
The
go.
frustrating thing for me right now is that my daughter finally agreed to have a video family counseling with me.
Good.
And in that counseling session, she was saying that she knows that her dad was like ignoring me, and then he would be like passive aggressively making comments when we were in public about things where it was like he would be like, oh, it's funny, everybody thought it was funny. And I'm like, well, not everybody thought it was funny, you know? And doing things like that. And the kids would get to where they would go, you know, why does Dad do that? And get all mad at him about it.
Well,
And
that's making him look like a chump.
Yeah.
but then when he left, because he had convinced them that I had a chemical imbalance, that they left with him. And that's what really, you know, got me. But I think it's because he knew how tied to family I am. So he saw that as a good mark and took it. So that's where I'm trying to be like, okay. But she had told me, she said, well, as a woman, I feel bad that you went through that. And, you know, like he did say things that were bad. He would be lazy, not helping you with anything. It was just, and he even says that he was dismissive, he was lazy, but he doesn't see that as being abusive. And so she said,
what I'm hearing from you though is his story's already falling apart. Your daughter's already starting to
Sorry,
see
the question.
but she had told me that as a woman, she feels bad for my situation and what I was going through. But her problem is that as her mother, I never should have reacted like.
And this is how you respond to that. You tell her she's right. You're right.
Okay.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah, it's right. I mean, that's what you have to try to control is your responses to the narcissist. You have to control it. You've got to, if the phone rings, you look at that phone call and you just lay the phone down on its face. Don't even answer it.
He's not allowed to talk to me via phone anymore because everything I said, you know, black was white and you know, up was down and everything. And I told him, I said, I can't talk to you on the phone anymore. That you just, if you need to communicate with me, do it in text. And that way I have a paper trail, you know?
Yeah, and you're playing it smart. You're playing it
I had to stop it. I had to stop that because I would get 6 pages of text message of calling me everything but the person I am. And, you know, I mean, if you've got grown children and there's nobody in the house, there's no really reason to have contact with him. You know, go cold turkey. That's what I had to do.
No, I mean, we haven't divorced yet. I'm in South Carolina and you have to be legally separated for a year before the process can even start. But then there's financial things that need, so I don't want to be where, because in like South Carolina, they see that as abandonment if I don't have any contact with him when he does try to call me, you know, or anything. And I don't want that to happen. So, but it's limited. I mean, it's not like he's blowing my phone.
I would limit him to talk to about the, you know, if he wants to call you about the electric bill or text you about the electric bill, that's all you're going to talk about. You know, I mean, I'm just saying.
He doesn't call me about paying for bills. That's for sure.
Well,
I'm not worried about that one.
I'm just saying limit him to only talk about what needs to be talked about. If he starts getting into anything else, then stop the conversation and say, I'm done.
Well, that's really why I went to the texting.
Yeah, and that's smart.
Yeah, I just couldn't.
Yeah, well, like right now, it's like your nervous system is still like in the reset mode. You're still going through the flashbacks. You're still doing through everything. One of the things, go onto my YouTube feed, and I want you to type in parental alienation. There's a 2-hour video or 2-hour talk that I did. It's really, really important that you watch that whole thing. Partly, it's like you're going to understand what the kids have been through, right? All of the ways that they got manipulated, the way that all of those other things have happened, and it'll also give you communication strategies to talk to them, right? One of the things you want to avoid as much as you can is being defensive, right? They're saying, "Mom, you are."
Say that last part again, please.
As much as you can is being defensive, right? You want to acknowledge. And with even like if you are going to keep going to the therapy with your child, listen 2 to 3 times longer than you talk, repeat what you hear. It's like, yeah, no, I did lose my temper there. Yeah, that was a very thing. And how did that make you feel? You got scared. Okay? No, who is it that you need me to be? Oh, you needed to be more courageous. Well, thank you for telling me that. You know what? I'm going to put that on my roadmap. I'm gonna work through that because I need to be braver. I need to be more courageous. Or I need to be all of those things. You're absolutely right. And how did that make you feel? I felt like I didn't have anyone to turn to. That must have been horrible. I'm here now. I'm sorry I hurt you in the past.
Right.
And it is listening far more than you talk. And we can't regulate ourselves to our children. Our children regulate to us. It's a covert contract that we had when we had children. And that's just the way it has to be, right? Get support elsewhere, but your kids regulate to you, and then you regulate to someone else, and I'll just be present, acknowledge what they're feeling, right? Because they're going to be on the lower triangle, right? Kids are always going to be on the lower triangle. Let them be that way. It felt like this. It felt like this. It felt like this. All you need to do is observe. Don't get baited. Like your kids will bait you. Don't get baited. Just listen, watch, right? Keep that neocortex online. One of the ways that you can kind of keep your neocortex online, especially if you have to deal with these intense things and you want to feel like you want to go into the freeze response or anything else. One of the tools that you can do is you can tap your left hand, left, right, left, right, left, right. Just try to keep yourself in the present moment. The other thing is just count to 10 in your head. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And just witness. Just witness. Keep your breathing slow. Witness. You're going to want to respond, bite your tongue for a little while. Vent later. It's like, I can't believe she accused me of this or accused me of this. But, keep asking her how she feels. Asking her, how did that make you feel? What is it that you wanted differently? What do you want now? What if I took you out tomorrow and did this instead? What if we did that, or what if we did this? Getting them to talk. Don't tell them what to do. They're not 5 anymore. But with a 21-year-old, it's just like their brains are going to spin really fast. All we got to do is remember that kindergarten voice. The kindergarten teacher.
Have a 18, 21, 28 and 31-year-old.
Yeah, and for the most part, it's just like their most of their cognitive development is already done, right? They're going to, a lot of their limbic system, all their attachment stuff is probably done at around 6 or 7, and then once they kind of hit the tweens and teens, they're actually raised more by their network, their friend network, their schools, all of those other things, than they are to their own parents. And the weird thing is they will actually listen to other people's parents before they listen to you. They'll go to their best friend's mom and ask for advice, and they'll listen to the best friend's mom. So make friends with the best friend's mom, if that helps. But yeah. So.
Hey, Miles.
Yeah. Hey, Chuck.
I'm Chuck from Iowa.
Hey, Chuck.
First time been on here, and I've done a lot of research after what I've been going through here in a relationship for 2 years, and I didn't even know I was in a narcissistic relationship until the very end. So I went through the cycles upon cycles, and mentally destroyed me. So I guess I really don't have a question here. But how are they able to do this to people? They're pure evil. I was married for 20 years. Before my relationship with her, I was with a relationship after that, but for 3 years. But I was with her for 2 years, and this was the worst relationship I've ever been in. Ever been in.
Here's the quick answer. Here's the quick answer. You're a good person. You've got a big heart. You've got a lot of empathy. They thrive on that. They search that out.
Yep, I've
You're
learned
the target.
I know, and I've learned so much. I've done so much research on this. But I'm going to court over this shit now.
Mm-hmm.
She went after me for stalking her. I'm a writer. I've been writing so much in my books.
Mm-hmm.
And I was not, well, I was on her street, but above her house. I was writing for myself,
Mm-hmm.
self-reflecting, write it down, and rip it up and get rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
And the second time, I was going out to write, and I saw her at a bar out front. Bar was closed, and I followed her home, make sure she made it home. And I went to jail. Never been in jail in my life. I'm 47 years old, and the worst 17 hours of my freaking life.
Yeah, and there's going to be trauma there. That
So much, even for my children. I have four children.
How old are your kids?
What's that?
How old are your kids?
My oldest is 23. Asen is 19, 18, and 16.
Okay.
So I had to call my daughter from my house to say, I can't pick you up, I'm going to jail.
Mm. That's got to be hard.
For everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, yeah, of course, she's playing the victim of everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's so much, again, the cycle that you everyone's talking about, and what I've also learned too as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, how did I see those red flags? There's so many of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know a lot of stuff after the fact because I now know she was with many men after her third marriage.
Mm-hmm.
But this 2019, I dated her in 2023. I had no idea what she was with all these men. If I would have known no. But she is a user. She's a taker.
Yeah, and the whole thing is like you're safe now, right? Like you can forget about, like you can research narcissism to death. It's not going to help you understand that. Why you were targeted, Carol nailed it, because you're kind and you're compassionate and you're empathetic and you're easy.
They only search out the smartest people. They want what you have.
Yeah,
that's what they're without. They want what you have, so that's why they're going to search for the most giving, caring. Everything that you are empty, or they are empty of, that you have, that's what they want.
Mm.
They're jealous of you.
Eat your ball.
They mirror you. They mirror you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the, I know when you have children, it's hard not to no contact, but
Well,
one of the things
I don't have children with her.
Mm-hmm.
I have children with my marriage. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Don't engage in conversation if you don't have to. Never justify your actions. Don't respond if you don't have to. Don't argue with them. Don't defend yourself. And don't explain yourself. You don't have to do that to them. Because it doesn't matter.
You mean my children? You mean my children?
Oh, I think he means your ex.
There's a narcissist.
I can't have contact with her right now at
Good.
all.
So that works in your favor.
She knows what she did, and she knows the people, because I know a lot of people, and we have mutual friends. We have mutual friends, and they all don't want nothing to do with her.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things. Yeah.
So you can actually look at that as a blessing, right? You got court ordered this, so that's great. And then and it's like, yeah, you might have to go to court and say, yeah, I did follow her home. Wasn't my intention to stalk her or whatever it is. You'll get a lawyer. You'll figure that out.
Well, I have a lawyer. Yeah, it's all in process right now.
Yeah, and I'm sorry you have to go through that, right?
But I'll tell you, this has been going on since the breakup happened in the first year. January 1st, and here we are today. But it was tough. The gentleman that was talking about not sleeping, I was there.
Yeah.
I was there for a very long time, reliving the relationship, how good it was, and just reliving all the memories. And then until I really found out who she was, and I tell you what, I'm in a better spot right now than I ever have. And I'm glad I've seen you, Miles, to really hear other people's story, because it's really hard for me to explain to people who have never done it.
It makes no sense.
Been in a situation like this. It's very. I tell you what, it's very frustrating at times. But it's hard. Do I stop explaining it to people?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Just stop. And it's actually irrelevant, right? Because like if you're looking for validation from the external world, like then you're talking about what Deborah was talking about, the anxious avoidant attachment style. What you actually need to do is attach to yourself, and once you kind of do that, then it doesn't really matter, right?
Yeah.
I already got a video going out that's calling Sandra an apple tree, right? I'm going to create a whole smear campaign about how Sandra's an apple tree, and it's not even a lie. She's probably 37% apple tree, right? I don't know what the DNA is of that.
Yeah.
It's just let them. Like, let them. What you need to do is reset your nervous system. You need to slow your breathing down. You need to do all sorts of other stuff. And
I really have been doing so well.
good.
Within the last maybe 3 weeks, I'm a food service director here in where I live.
Mhm.
And I have a great support system at my work.
Mhm.
With the president of the college and the professors of the college,
Mhm.
and of course my family, my friends.
Mhm.
She isolated me from my family, my friends through the 2 years I was with her, because I'm sure she didn't want people to she wanted to be around my friends because they would probably saw what I didn't see.
Yeah.
And there was
That's
she
a prime
really
thing
did.
with a narcissist.
Yeah.
A narcissist will alienate you from your family, friends, and everybody
Yeah.
because they want you all to themselves and control you.
Yep, and she did to my children as well. She really did. So,
Yeah, and none of it is permanent. And the whole thing is you're actually smarter now, you're wiser now, and you'll be able to catch this crap a lot sooner from now on. And what you're going to realize is, and even during the recovery process, it's just you see narcissism everywhere, right? But the whole thing is like once you learn that no drama thing, it's just like you can work with the narcissist, you can have a relationship with a narcissist, you can do whatever you want with a narcissist because you're not playing the game anymore. If they're not getting the reaction from you, they're going to move on to someone that is.
Sure.
And by that point, it's just like, all right, cool, you do whatever that you want. But then
for me, I mean, you hear the word narcissist, but you don't know really what it was about. I tell you what, when this was all happening with me, I mean, I have an iPhone, and your phone listens to you. And I never once said the word narcissist.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, Facebook popped up everything.
Yeah.
And that's where I started to learn more about it.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, this is what I went through.
Yeah.
And so it was eye-opening. And then I did more research and a lot of writing. I wrote so much. I'm still writing.
Good for you.
I wrote a lot with what you said tonight. And I thank you for that. I really thank you.
And remember to review all of those things as well. Because keep in mind, it's just like, if you don't take action now, it's a day from now, everything that you write down is disappearing. I think it would. If you write it down, you'll retain 80% of it the next day. You'll retain 20% of it 7 days later. So it's just like constantly going back and remembering and doing all of those things. And even my feed is always about being aware of your emotions, holding the feelings.
Yeah.
I mean, what you think is not the end. Like it is, like it does hurt and it is painful, but it takes strength and resilience to get up and take a step forward and do all of those things.
Well, again, I'm going to cut this short here for me, but I want to thank you, Miles, for one, and all those who have spoke tonight. I really appreciate everyone's words tonight. It really helped me a lot.
Yeah, I'm so glad.
I promise you, this is Carol again. I promise you, I mean, I'm 2.5 years out. Maybe it was a little quicker for me, and maybe it might be longer for you.
Yeah.
But like I said, it's like a comic book now. I can look back at it. I laugh at it. It's not a part of my being anymore. It doesn't affect my feelings anymore. I mean, I hate to say it, and this might be a bad way to say it, if the man died in a car wreck today, I don't care.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how I feel.
Yeah.
At some point, you're just going to go to, it's not love or hate or anxiety or trauma or all of those other things. It's going to go to indifference, right? I can think about some of the worst things that have ever happened to me, and it's just kind of like, oh, yeah, I remember that. I survived that. Your traumas are going to end up being, like, as you go through the recovery process, you're going to look back at each one of those traumas, and you're going to be like, this is all the times that life tried to take me out and failed. Right? There could be two people that can be on a plane crash and survive, right? Everyone dies, but two people survive. One will be like afraid to leave the house, never going to be in there. The other one will think, fuck, a plane crash couldn't kill me. I'm fucking invincible. So you pick. It's the same trauma. How do you want to interpret it, right? How do you want to interpret it? You want to be president of a country? You want to be president of a country? Spend 26 years in jail. That's what Nelson Mandela did, right? So it's just like, great, yeah, you had to spend 16 hours in jail, but Nelson Mandela spent 26 and turned out to be president of the United States. Where are you, or not the United States, of South Africa? Where are you going to be? Where are you going to be, right? So it's just like, great. That happened. What are you going to turn that into next year? What does that actually mean? Look what I survived. And it's not stopping me, right? It's like your catering business will take off. This will take off. You'll just focus on whatever it is that you need to focus on. And,
I appreciate your time, Miles. I
No
really
worries.
do. Thank you, and I'll be looking out for you. Okay.
All right.
Yeah. God bless you guys.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm so glad that you took the time to come out. And yeah, just check my calendar, see when the next time is available. But all right. So as we just kind of wrap everything up tonight, I just want to leave you with this. Don't let this be just another video. Don't let it be something that you watched and felt a little bit better in the moment and forgot about a week from now. Right? Like, you came here for a reason, and you've seen the insights, you've listened to the stories, you've felt the truth land. So now what are you going to do with that? Because you deserve more than survival. And real recovery takes intention, it takes action. And I'll give you the tools that I use, right? And the same insights that helped me reclaim my life. You've come this far. Don't stop here. So look for the link in the descriptions or click the button below if you see one and book a call, and I'll walk you through the next steps, right? Because you owe this to yourself, not to prove anything to anyone else, but because you matter. And recovery, that's something that you do for you. So take the next step. Take it right now. The future self is going to come back and is going to thank you. All right. And thank you so much for watching. And I really do appreciate your support.